the YouTube channel to make sure it's there.
Are you Quentin or are you QAnon? Am I calling you QAnon?
No, just call me Q, bro. Let us know when we're live, Romy.
All right. The YouTube channel. We are live. We're good. We can go.
Alrighty, welcome. Good afternoon. Sunday, November 1st. Hope you're listening to Christmas music already. It's already blaring in the grocery store. This is Basement Talks. We got Q over here in the plaid. We got Rami in the blue. Myself with the bland background of Rolo. And today we're going to be talking about self-improvement, goals and momentum, tech censorship that was all the rage this past week, as well as familial and relationships.
Sounds good to me.
So let's lead off the first one. Roland, why don't you go ahead?
Alrighty. Well, for this week, for self-improvement, I've been trying to eat a lot healthier. And I bought probably 3 or 4 pounds worth of bananas. And I've been eating at least 1 or 2 a day for the past, I'd say, 3 or 4 days. And then I also went outside by the ship channel and just watched the ships go by and soaked up the sun for a few hours. It was very nice.
Sweet.
And soak up that vitamin D to fend off the corona.
Get that Rona away from you.
That's right.
I've been been doing some work. Obviously, I'm in school, and I've been working on my class. I also just noticed that I'm not doing things. I used to do things that I used to really enjoy, but they were difficult. And I've just stopped doing them because they're difficult. And I guess the year has been so stressful, even before Corona, that I didn't want to do difficult things, and I would just catch myself scrolling and do dumb stuff. And so I used to play really fun brain games. I think one platform was called Elevate. Rosetta Stone used to have one. I haven't seen it, though, in a while. It might be gone. And then Peak and Lumosity, stuff like that. And I that's how I would pass my time, as opposed to scrolling and doing mindless things. I would do that. And then I had ebooks about math and just like little fun math things that you could do with like probabilities and ratios and complex numbers in your head, stuff like that. I used to do that all the time, and I don't do it anymore. And I've gotten really rusty. You just totally lose things like that if you don't use them. And so I downloaded all that stuff again. I started doing that over the weekend. And I've just tried to be more active. It's been really difficult to want to go and lift weights and do stuff like that again because I tore up my shoulder and it hurts. But I'm not going to give myself any excuses. There's things that hurt my shoulder. There's things that don't hurt my shoulder. And I shouldn't just basically write off all of those things because, oh, my shoulder hurts. If my shoulder hurts, I should have like the most jacked legs in the world. So I'm just trying to do stuff like that. That's about it. I've been really busy.
I think schedules are finally starting to get back to not necessarily normal pre-corona, but I think people have just accepted, hey, this is here, deal with it, because grocery stores are finally starting to be open much later at night.
I'm going to go back another grocery store. I think I'm just going to pick up my groceries from now on because it's just so easy. I just make the order on my phone when I'm in bed, and I don't have to go wander. Also,
but they used to limit the hours.
Because I'm not like impulse buying. What about you, Rami? What have you been doing?
This week I've just been busy. Since it was like my birthday and my girlfriend's birthday, it's been kind of busy. But I also have been just doing like a lot of learning for how to set up the stream better, how to like do lighting, how to do like just weird animations and stuff for not weird, but like just animations and stuff for YouTube. Looking up like reviews, studying which microphone I wanted. Eventually got a new mic, got new lights. I got a green screen. My room's actually kind of a mess right now because like this thing back here, we're unloading it all and like checking to see like what's valuable, what's not, what we need to throw away, what we need to keep. And then I'm going to move that back.
Bookcase?
Yeah. Yeah, it was actually like you can see like it used to be like an entertainment center back in the day when like 36 inches TV were like the normal thing to have for like a family, like Zenith TVs back in the day.
Dude, I had one. It was awesome.
Yeah.
CRTs.
Yeah, CRTs. And so I'm going to be moving that out of my room, moving my bed back, and then using like a green screen for like my own YouTube channel. And you'll probably actually see the green screen here too, but I don't know if I'll have anything behind me just besides green. So I've been doing a lot of learning on that, and then I started delving into like LinkedIn learning and yesterday for digital marketing stuff and trying to get on the ball on that. But my day was cut short because I had to go to my girlfriend's birthday party, so I didn't get too much into it, but I did start, so that was good. The other thing is one of the things I've struggled with that I need to do more often is like take care of my health outside of like just diet, because I still have this problem with my hands and my legs. And I went Thursday to I have my blood cell count. I'm not sure how they measure it, right, but they have like a number associated with it, and it was like over 75 or something ridiculous, which is like ridiculously high. I think like the max, like on the high end that they would ever want, it would be like 50. So my doctor gave me orders to give blood every 2 weeks, which is unusual. Normally, like if you guys were to give blood and you didn't have like a medical condition for giving blood, you would only be allowed to do it once a month. So I was able to shortcut it to like once every 2 weeks. And that has lowered my blood cell count from like 75. And when I went this past week, this past Thursday, they took it before, they'd count the cells before I give blood, so it was at a 48, and then I gave blood, and then next time I go, it might be at like a 45, which is what my doctor wants it at. Regardless, my blood cell levels are like a normal-ish rate, and I'm still having issues with like my nerves in my hands and my feet. So it might not be because of the blood cell count. So one thing I'm really bad about is like getting a doctor's appointment. Like I don't do it for whatever reason. It's not even like I'm like I am afraid of needles, but it never stops me from doing anything. It's just going to the doctors is like, I don't know. I've been really bad about the appointments. My girlfriend's like, you need to make that appointment. And I'm like, okay, I need to make an appointment. So that'll be something I work on.
Going to a doctor's office now is like hell because there's like a line outside now, and it's, you know, they treat everyone as if they have coronavirus because they have to.
I wonder if we're all subconsciously very concerned about our own mortality. Like being aware of your mortality and being humbled by life is a good thing. I think that no matter how you feel about coronavirus, it does kill people. Like that's everyone at this point knows somebody who knows somebody or directly knows somebody who's died from the virus. Mm-hmm. So, and I've known people that have been our age that have been, you know, really, really sickened by it. And that does weigh at the back of your head. I think at this point, like all of society has some sort of like gallows syndrome where we're just like, all right, I'm so sick of dealing with this thing. Like, I don't care if I get it, and we're just like done and we want to go about our normal lives. But I think that stress is always in the back of your mind, and it makes you very hyper vigilant when it comes to your own mortality, and you just don't want to go to the doctor. Because I really need to go to the doctor. There's a couple of things that I really need to get done. And I'm just like, no, not doing it.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, you know, because I'm like, I don't expect good news when I go to the doctor. I don't think that I've had good news from a doctor in like 2 years, right?
Same.
So it's like, you know, like I don't know that I want to go and hear more bad news. Like I don't know that I can physically like actually handle it after the type of year that I've had. I totally can, but that is all, you know, I don't want.
Yeah.
So I just don't. So like I can sympathize. I wonder if like if lifting or something would lower your red blood cell count. I don't know if that like raises it or lowers it, because I mean you're building muscle and that requires, you know, excess blood flow and the volume of your
I have
vessels
no idea. I mean, right now, like, so I've gone to the doctor before where I didn't have, like, the reason my red blood cell count jumped up is because I was on testosterone treatment, right? Because I had all this, like, issues all these medical issues causing my testosterone to be low. So my blood cell count has been before, I think, like I went to the doctor one time and it was like 51. So it's lower than it's been at its max, like naturally. But I still have these issues going on with my hands and my feet. So I don't know if it is a blood cell count issue. I mean, I don't know if like lifting weights will help it or not. It feels like a nervous system issue now, but it could also, I don't know, maybe it could be like a circulation issue. If my blood isn't circulating well enough, then I imagine that would cause similar issues, but I don't know.
Do you have like varicose veins in your legs?
I do not.
I wonder if you're having like a parasympathetic backlash to like stress. Like if you were just, this has been a particularly stressful year and your body is sympathetically having symptoms because you've internalized a lot of stress. Because I know like I have internalized a ton of stress and I've had physical symptoms because of it this year. So that's
right.
The reason I mentioned that.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. I haven't had that problem before where it was like affecting my nerves. Well, I actually did. After I got transverse myelitis and I healed from it, even a few years later, anytime I had like a really big test or something, or I was depressed about something, I would start like losing feeling in my hands and my feet.
So maybe that is it.
It could be, but I wouldn't say I feel particularly stressed this year. I mean, maybe, I don't know. This year I have like a girlfriend, right? So like, you know, and I'm talking about getting married.
Even though that's a good thing, it's a good stress. It's a you stress. It's still a stress.
Yeah, it is
Sounds
still a stress.
Like a medicinal marijuana card is in your future.
I don't know if I would get along with marijuana too well, but yeah. Do they have those in Texas?
No.
They don't? Okay.
No.
Yeah.
It's probably for the best.
Probably. I know Joe Rogan, he like moved to Austin now and he'll be smoking on set. I'm like, okay, just disregard for the law.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing. I was like, that's not good. And like that sets, because in California it's one thing and kids watch a show and in California they can be like, well, weed's legal in California. Like here it's just like disregard.
Yeah.
It's just complete disregard for the law. As much as I like the guy, like I think that sets a bad precedence, and just saying basically that's not an unjust law. Like people can say whatever they want. It's not an unjust law, but basically saying this is a law I don't particularly like, so I'm not going to follow it. And then having that sentiment popularized is not a good thing.
Right, I agree. It's definitely not a great thing for it to happen. But yeah.
But yeah, I mean, honestly, if your stress level has just gone up gradually over a year, you may not feel stress, but your body is basically just racked by stress and it's become your new normal.
I mean, it could be. I mean, I will say this, though, that the treatments like getting my blood out has helped. Like, it has helped it out. I just don't know.
That's good.
Yeah. Like, definitely getting the blood out has helped, which made me think it was a red blood cell count issue to begin with. But it hasn't.
It could be like a lagging, it could have a lagging effect. You can be back to normal now, and it still basically had some effect, and it's continued.
Yeah,
the symptoms are going to lag.
It could be, yeah. Yesterday, I was at my girlfriend's birthday party, and like, I stood up. I think the longest I've stood up since I've had this issue. The party started at like 6, and I had been standing since like 5 or 4 p.m. and it didn't end till like midnight. So I had stood up, like I was standing like the whole night. I didn't sit down really at all. And like by the end of the night, I had this weird pain in my legs. I was just like, this is strange. And my feet were
sounds like varicose veins, man.
You think so?
Yeah.
It's also just fatigue. Like if you haven't used a muscle, they atrophy,
Yeah, that's true.
Your bones lose density too. Like if you're not on your feet and you're not on your legs, your bones do lose density. Like it's osteoclast and osteoblast, like remodel your bone structure. Ultimately every 7 years you become a completely new person cellularly, more or less.
That's true.
And your bones change.
Yeah.
So if you've been particularly inactive over a period of, let's say 7 years, then your bones have probably lost it. I'm not a doctor, like, I don't know, but like the likelihood that they've lost density as opposed to somebody who's like a weightlifter or something like that is probably, probably real.
Yeah. So basically, moral of the story, I need to see a doctor at some point in the near future.
I think that's like all three of us.
Yeah.
I wonder if like past generations had to like, if they just ignored their health problems and like, I'll be okay, and then they all drop dead at like 70 from heart attacks.
Yeah.
And if we're just like overly cautious about our health, and maybe we'll live longer, but I don't know.
Could also be that like back then, like some of their lifespans were really short, but just because of the lack of medicine, but also their food was different, their exercise regime was different because their work was different, right? Like a lot of people had to grow their own food and they were outside more, and so I imagine like people in the past were like way healthier than they are today.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like we know more about nutrition than we ever have in existence, and we just ignore it. We're just like, our food doesn't need nutrients, and I'll eat carbs, and I'll never die.
Yeah,
I'll just stuff my face with sugar and carbs.
It's a little ironic. We have so much information on what the foods we should eat are, and we just have total disregard for it. Even though, like in the past, like it was really interesting. I was watching like some documentary or something on like how these like tribal people ate, and they had like some fruit, but like mostly meat, and their teeth would all come in straight, like they never had crooked teeth or anything. And it turns out like crooked teeth is like more of like a modern thing with their food and our diet and stuff. And I was like, that's really interesting. I never knew that before.
Who is it? There's like a doctor. My wife knows who this person is. There's like a doctor. He was like a dentist, and he went around the world looking at people's teeth, and then he looking at diets and stuff, and directly correlated the two. And it's really interesting because I have like naturally straight teeth, and so does my wife. And I ate a lot of beef growing up, like Texas, right? So I ate a lot of beef, and my wife ate a lot of meat, and it was mostly chicken though. But like we have both really straight teeth. And then I don't know about her sibling, but my siblings ate like crap, and they had like just dental problems. I probably directly attributed to it. And their teeth are straight and good looking now, but like that's a lot of dental work.
Are you the oldest in your family for siblings?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I think as time goes on, as when you're a parent, you're just like, here's a Pop-Tart.
Yeah. I've heard
that. To get stuff done. Yeah. So I'll start off like some things that I've been doing to build momentum on the good choices I've been making. I didn't have a reason to set a real schedule. Like I didn't wake up super late, and I didn't go to bed super late or anything, but like my waking and sleep time was really inconsistent, and like within an hour. So like but I would consider it inconsistent, like regulation and just good patterns, build just regularity and obviously just good habits, right? So I was like, this last week, I'm like, all right, I'm going to bed this time for sure, unless like I have class at night, so it makes it kind of more difficult. But those times aside, this is the time I'm going to bed. This is the time I'm waking up. This is what I'm going to do. I've been doing my OMAD. I'm going to continue doing 1 meal a day. Like I feel great actually doing that. And I've been just losing fat. And people are like, well, yeah, you're not eating much. No, I'm like eating a normal amount of calories for a day. I'm just starving my body of sugars and fats, not fats, but fats in the form of like carbohydrates, simple carbs, and doing that. And I'm going to do something. There's like an app called like Rescue Time or something like that. Basically like a day planner to like help keep you on task and track. I find I'm always like, I don't ever have enough time. And like, that's probably true. I am very busy, but I honestly don't use my spare time well. I'm just like, oh, I'm exhausted. I don't want to do this. And so I end up falling behind in some things I should be getting done or other things that should already be done. And I just basically sabotage myself because these things pile up. They don't go away, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not building momentum on the accomplishments that I'm making throughout the day. And it's probably because the little time I do have, I'm not using it to build momentum. And so therefore, I'm not ever really getting ahead. I'm not really playing catch up either, but I'm just kind of in this stasis, like just this kind of standstill where I'm productive, but not as productive as I could be, and I don't really want to be there.
Yeah. I've noticed that setting alarms helps. I'm going to probably be setting more alarms just because, like, instead of just scheduling something, like I could schedule something, but setting alarms, like I've got a Google Home, like Mini. Spotify was giving it away for free, like last year or something like that. Yeah, so I went ahead and got one. And it's nice because I can be like, hey, and then I name the company, right? And I say, set an alarm for XYZ for this reason. And it syncs up with my phone. And if whatever I'm doing, it'll alert me on my home and it'll alert me on my phone. And whatever I'm doing, I know I have something else I need to be doing. It alerts me. And that's actually really helpful. It's better than just like setting a schedule and then looking at it to like adhere by it. Like setting alarms for it has really kind of helped me, and I'm going to be setting more alarms because I have more stuff to do now. Like I want to get more consistent with my video uploads on my own channel, and I want to get more consistent with like LinkedIn Learning and like actually scheduling it out and like learning more. So that's what I'm going to be doing, I think, is setting alarms for certain periods of the day, like maybe 2 hours to LinkedIn a day or whatever, and then dedicate a few hours towards like consistently like making video uploads and stuff like that. That's what has helped me in the past, like just certain things like reading my Bible. Like I tell everybody, reading my Bible is like a big deal. So, but I'm really bad at sticking with it. So I've made an alarm and it's helped me every day. It rings at noon and it's just like, okay, go read it. Like stop what you're doing, go read it. So it's been convenient, I guess. It's just really scheduling stuff.
So to touch on the whole Bible thing, there's been too much focus as far as religion is concerned on individual personal gnosis, and like how you feel about your spirituality and how it makes you feel, and all of this me stuff has basically, the me culture has basically just infiltrated, modern Christianity or any religion for that matter. And there's just been an abandonment of religiosity with religion. And like, you don't exist. God doesn't exist to make you happy from a religious standpoint. You exist to devote your time to that deity and to worship. And there is a liturgy and a religiosity behind the year and behind your day that you should adhere to. And that is where a lot of people used to find fulfillment in previous generations from their respective faith and religion was the religiosity. And that has been completely abandoned. And as we've seen, like, churches become more secular and less religious and less adherent to a liturgy, you see people just falling apart in their own personal lives and going away from that that schedule and that regulation, and society has basically become more open to sloth and laziness, and ultimately just poor time management or poor structure, And
Yeah.
I think with those things, we've never seen a society without a consistent religious structure succeed. And everybody's like, that's not true, and they'll argue with me. But like, truly, throughout history, we really haven't. Like, that's not a real thing. And so I think that's awesome, man. I think you should religion, like that. It should be religious.
Yeah, I think one of the problems with the churches in the American church is like this appeal to hyper individuality or hyper individualism, and you can't have like a church body if everyone isn't on the same page. You know,
Right.
you need to some degree. Not every now. It's impossible to get everyone on the same page on exactly every single page, but for like 99% of things, you should be able to get everyone on the same page with like morally and like agreeing. And one thing I see from a lot of quote unquote Christians these days. I'll speak to Christians because I don't know how it is in like Islam or Buddhism or any other religion or like Judaism or whatever. Is like I'll see Christians like, oh, I don't need to go to church. I don't need community. I don't need people to hold me accountable.
Easter, just Easter.
Yeah, it's yeah, they're just like Easter only or Christmas only Christians, and it's like no, like being part of that church group, like it provides like accountability for you, and it makes you a better person. You know what I mean?
This is a good discussion. Let's save this for family and interpersonal relationships.
Sounds good. We'll get to it
'cause
later
this is
today.
this is gonna be a good discussion.
Yeah.
So what about you, Rolo? What's your momentum building?
Here, hold on. Oh, it sounded like someone was screaming and yelling outside. No, thankfully not.
Living in France there,
just
bud?
someone Going living what?
I said living in France there, bud.
Yeah,
God.
no. It was just, I think, someone going up the stairs.
We should make that bonus content. Maybe we'll talk about what happened in France as like bonus content at the end.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Nah. I mean, I'm probably more scared about what happened in Quebec, man. Wearing like a medieval ninja costume or something with
You
swords.
can talk
and
about
stuff.
that as bonus content. Let's talk about momentum.
That is crazy. Absolutely crazy.
So what's your momentum?
Yeah, just write everything down that I'm doing or want to set out. Like, even if it's something, as simple as cleaning something or, cutting your hair, whatever. Just write it down on a big list and, put it on a bulletin board or tape it up to a mirror or whatever.
Did you listen to Matthew McConaughey and Joe Rogan this week?
No, why did they talk
I
about
did.
that?
Yeah, actually, it's great, dude. Matthew McConaughey.
I've always done
sage
that.
advice.
I've always done that since the service. Is just write down write down all the maintenance you got to get done, for the week, and then the maintenance you got to get done for the month, and then the maintenance you got to get done in the next 4 months, all the way up to a year, and just, when you get something done, cross it off, go on to the next thing.
I think we should all like commit to having. So what I'm gonna start doing, and I just naturally do it, and it's really bad. I'll wake up at like 4:30, and then I'll be like, I'm wide awake. Like I should be awake. I should get up and I should do stuff. I'm not requiring as much sleep anymore in one stretch. But like if I don't sleep much at night, or like if I only sleep like 5 or 6 hours or 6 hours or something at night, then I'll need like an hour nap. And like I can accommodate that. But I should just be waking up at 4:30 and having like a power hour, getting a workout, making breakfast for my wife and stuff, and like starting my day really strong like that. And I'm not. I think we should all probably do that. Like that's if you look at habits of successful people, they generally always have a period of time where they get themselves collected. It's not like about you, and it's not me time. I think we've labeled it me time, but it's a time to improve, collect yourself, itemize, and set an agenda for the day, and then go out and tackle it and get a good start, a good launch.
Yeah, I think we've gotten away from that because of phones and TV. We're just bombarded with alert noises, ting, 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 whatever, email, whoosh, whoosh, whatever, and just poof, you don't even no concept of time anymore because you're always connected.
I feel like this was something I was thinking about just today, actually. Or yesterday. Like a lot of people's time among millennials is very spontaneous. Maybe it's just me and the people I know, but it feels really spontaneous. You know what I mean? Like, you can make plans, and like, for example, I do make plans with my girlfriend, but sometimes she'll just spring plans on me. And it's like, let's just go out or whatever. And I'm like, okay, I was doing something, but okay, I'll go, because she gets really upset if I don't go. So I'll be like, okay, I'll go. And then like today, like I told you guys, I had an unexpected visitor, which is actually okay with me because it was important. So that was
Is
fine.
it the IRS?
No, it's actually one of my friends. He's from Canada, but he lives here in Texas, and he was trying to get his driver's license renewed for Texas so he can go vote on Tuesday. So I was like, okay, this is pretty important. Like, he didn't have a printer, so he needed a printer to provide documentation for the renewal of his driver's license. So I was like, cool, like that's fine. But yeah, so like I don't know, it feels like people are like really spontaneous, and I'm guilty of it too. Like, I'm definitely guilty of it. Like, I'll be like, you know, just on the spot, hey, you want to hang out like right now? Like, you want to go do something right now or whatever? I don't make plans hardly ever. Like, I do make plans. Like, we make plans to do this, like this podcast, but for the most of my life, I never was really like a planner or an organizer or something. So I really feel like all this stuff is like, it's very useful for like the millennial generation. I mean, some people, their personality types are just naturally organized and naturally plan stuff out. But I feel like there's a lot of people that don't. And so to plan stuff out, to do stuff like organize and whatnot is just like really like a solid idea. Like, just to
I agree.
set goals and follow through with them. Because, you know, I don't know how you guys had it, but like I was homeschooled, right? And there's two types of homeschoolers. There's like homeschoolers that are disorganized, messy, whatever. They still get the work done. They still learn, but it's a very
Laissez-faire.
yeah, just free as can be kind of thing. Like, there were days, you know, I just hung out with friends instead of doing any sort of schoolwork whatsoever. And then like when I did have schoolwork, it was, you know, really relaxed or whatever. And then I had other friends, the other kind of homeschooler, who their parents were very structured, very organized, and like, okay, at this time you're going to do this, at this time you're going to do this, and then, you know, they instilled that in their kids, and that's how their kids just grew up doing it, and that's good too. But for me, I was on the laissez-faire side of things, just willy-nilly kind of schooling. I never really had summer vacation because I was homeschooled, so if I did go on vacation, I could just take my books with me, and I would always be studying through the summer. I always had like schoolwork I was doing through the summer. And I had for other friends like that too, to the point where their mom wouldn't even tell them what grade they're in. Just do schoolwork and don't worry about what grade you're in, which I thought was okay. And they actually turned out like just fine people, and they got through college no problem. But when you don't grow up with those organizational skills, that kind of discipline, it is harder to do in life. And that's what I'm learning to do right now, but I'm not finding it too terribly difficult. It's not like really stressful on me. It's just an adjustment. But I'm also in like a different headspace mentally, where I really realize I need to do this. Whereas if I was doing this 10 years ago, this podcast, I wouldn't be on here. I wouldn't be knowing y'all right now, because I was just like a totally different dude, and like organizing stuff was like, I don't know, faking gay.
Yeah. So I would actually say that you're probably better off being homeschooled, because I think me and Roland could probably attest to this. Public school is such a grind, and the structures and the schedules are so rigid, and you have such little free time that you actually kind of as you grow older, you're like probably, I think, less inclined to maintain such a rigid structure. And I think people who have been, like, if you ever notice like military brats, they're generally like really dysfunctional people. And I'm not talking bad about military brats or anything like that. I'm not, but like everybody I ever knew that grew up in the military, generally their parents had such a hardcore schedule that they either really made their kids follow the schedule, or they were just completely laissez-faire in the home, and the kid kind of had like this dysfunctional kind of schedule. And I'm speaking, I've seen this in my own family. So I don't know that the way school and public school makes you keep a schedule, it's healthy, because it's like, I would say that I don't know if Roland can attest to this, but like, you know, when I was in college, I did ROTC and I did the Corps of Cadets. That's not the military. I'm not saying it is, but it's like a very rigid structure. But we had time enough to be healthy. like somebody was looking at your schedule and saying like, okay, like you have enough time to sleep and you have time for, to eat and take care of yourself, right? Public school, they don't give a damn. Like they're just like, you have practice at 5 o'clock in the morning and you're gonna have practice until like 8 o'clock at night, and then you're gonna have 5 hours of homework when you get home, and if you sleep, that's on you. And it's a really bad and destructive schedule. It's demoralizing. And by the time you're done with school, you're just like, oh, thank God it's over. Like I just want to, like, there's a reason people have gap years.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to go to college and I don't want to do anything because they're just exhausted. And I think the school schedule is like abusive. I don't know what you think, Roland.
Yeah, they give way too much homework, I feel, nowadays, as opposed to.
I feel like I was always at practice of some sort too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I played 2 sports, but yeah, I was able to get my stuff done as like a freshman and sophomore, and then as a senior, and like as a junior, and then into senior year, it was like, wow, like why am I staying up so late doing this busy work? Like this is ridiculous. And
it's like here I'm taking A's on a test or something, but I still have to be like just completely bombarded with this crap. Or what's crazy is if you don't do that homework, you'll fail. It's weighted so heavily that you'll just fail.
Yeah, and you're crammed in like sardines into the classroom. Like
and so when I went to college the first time, I was like, this is great. And at some point, I think like 10 years ago, they recognized, or longer than that now, this has been like 14 years ago that I went to college. But like at some point, they realized maybe you're exhausted and they didn't assign homework, or your homework was weighted in such a minuscule way. Like you were responsible for yourself and you either studied and knew your stuff or you didn't and you weren't going to make it. But then when I went back to school, it was like homework was the most important thing, and you had to be busy, busy, busy all the time with BS that it was just repetition, and it was just exhausting.
Well,
I would say the best thing. Go ahead, Rolo.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say like
now.
There's a delay. you go ahead.
There, I think it was like a former Secretary of Education or something was just saying at some big think tank or whatever interview how we need to get rid of the agrarian calendar year for school, and that we need to, or the agriculture calendar for school, and we need to just go to all year round school.
Yeah,
so, like,
that would
imagine having no summer where like you can go play with friends and do something cool.
4 hours of free time back in your everyday.
Yeah, like if you had more free time, like if you got we work all the time.
It's the government. They're not gonna give you, they're not gonna go, okay, school, September through
Probably true.
9 hours a day plus 5 hours of homework. They're gonna do that all day, every day of the year.
Right.
So,
like
if they did it for like just 4 hours a day, I think everyone would be fine with that.
Yeah.
But that's not what.
Yeah, like 4 hours a day would not be bad. Like that's honestly kind of how I did it. Like some days I wouldn't even have school. Like it'd be a weekday. I go to the mall with my friends or whatever. Or we go to museums too. Because there's not only homeschooling, but there's unschooling. Y'all heard of that before?
Yeah.
That one is kind of cool.
It's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, it is cool. I knew a few unschoolers. They were involved in the homeschool groups. And
what?
Yeah, so unschooling. Have you heard of it, Roland?
No.
It's basically learning through life experience. So unschoolers will focus.
It used to be.
Yeah, it'll focus a lot on outings and like learning through just life and teaching practical things like, I don't know, like taxes or something, like how to do your taxes and take care of your house.
Because like, like my great-grandparents and my great-great-grandparents, I knew these people, which seems crazy because they would be like 120 years old or something now if they were alive, or older. Yeah, actually like 140. But, they went to school like 4 hours a day back then. And like, I don't know. All of them went and were college educated, actually. Well, most of them. A few weren't. But they had like an 8th grade education. They school stopped in like 8th or 10th grade, depending on the years that I'm talking about. Like the junior high school used to be like high school, and then high school became like something they added on. But they went to college. They were very successful, and I think they all pretty much went to one-room schoolhouses for about 4 hours a day. And the reason it could only be 4 hours a day is because like at least 4 hours of work or 5 hours of work had to be done by them on either side of that school. So they were apprenticing and working on the farm and working for their parents on the farms on either side of the school time. And school was seen as like a break. It was like, no farm work, no labor, no building barns or whatever. I'm going to go sit in this schoolhouse and there's a nice cool breeze and learn, whatever they were learning at the time. And so their schooling just reinforced the skills that they were being brought up with on the farm, or if they had a craft or something like that. It wasn't like, this is where you got your primary education. It was like, no, primary education was happening in the home or on the farm or, in the trade. And then basically your reinforcement of that learning was happening in the schoolhouse.
Yeah. It was cool back in the day. Like, it was very different.
Oh, I mean, I don't hold a candle to most of my great-grandparents or great-great-grandparents as far as their education. And I mean, it's sad. I mean, obviously, I'm pretty well educated, but honestly, the ones that had college educations, they were educated in such an efficient and classical manner that my intellect pales in comparison. And even the ones that just had a high school education, they could probably outright me for sure. And they're probably better at arithmetic and better at mental math and better at, applied mathematics than I am. And I studied that, so.
Yeah. It seems like we've really...
And now they're arresting kids for missing a Zoom class online.
Did that happen, really?
Yeah, they're for truancy and stuff. You're getting reported. They're counting it as skipping school.
That's ridiculous.
For not sitting there and listening to, whatever they say.
One set of my great-grandparents were almost completely uneducated because both of their fathers basically died and the family fell on really hard times. They come from well-educated families, but 3rd, 4th grade educations maybe, and they could just read, they just read mountains of books, and I mean really high-level books. And I remember my great-grandmother, she was just incredible at mental math. Like the things she could do in mental math, like to this day, I can't do. And I mean, she had virtually no education except she was taught herself that higher level math. And it was just crazy. So I'm going to be homeschooling my kids with some unschooling, basically, anytime I'm doing a craft or a project. And I like to do fun things like weld or make pieces of furniture, do woodworking, gunsmithing, stuff like that. Anytime I have a project like that, I'm just going to include them,
What do you think about higher education being left to businesses? Because I was actually thinking about how good or how I think I would like apprenticeships to come back. You know what I mean? And it would, you would learn. So one of the things I've heard, and I don't have the experience because I've only heard it. I did go to college, but I didn't finish. And I've heard from other people who were, who finished college and then went to work, that what they learned in college was non-applicable to their job, and they had to relearn things on the job. So what if instead of sending kids to brainwash stations that we call higher education, we just sent them to like large businesses and corporations for them to teach the kids like the necessary skills in order to...
I was thinking about this a few days ago, actually. It's weird that you brought it up. I wasn't going to bring it up, but I think it's a bit hopeful to think that there wouldn't be brainwashing because I've worked for big corporations and like there's a lot of Kool-Aid drinking and a lot of rah-rah BS that goes on in there that's just really destructive. But so I think you'd still be brainwashed. The cool thing is even though I'm pretty anti-corporatist, Like, I think we live in a corporatocracy, and I think that's a really bad thing. That doesn't mean I'm anti-business. I don't think that business should control government or our lives, but I actually think this is a great idea.
Yeah.
I actually don't have a problem with it. I think there would have to be some sort of standardization, because then if that industry collapsed, or if that industry, suffered a downturn, then you'd become out of work, but then you'd also just have no
replacements.
No replacements, and you'd have no ability to get new employees. So, I mean, you wouldn't be able to replace your own job, and then, no one would hire you because your skills aren't applicable. I'm getting notifications. Are they coming up on my screen, or is my screen unobstructed?
Your screen is unobstructed.
Cool.
I was going to say a good industry to look at this is the trucking industry. So a lot of the trucking companies will offer pretty decent paying jobs. Like, you'll get like 40, 50K in your first year, but they pay for your education, which is, I don't know, like $10,000 or something like that, $6,000. And you stay on with them for a year. And after you stay on with them for a year or two, or whatever the contract is, they give you a big pay increase, and you start making 60, 70, 80K a year as a trucker. But they pay for you to get educated.
Tough work.
It is tough work.
Ron probably has a lot of insight on that, because he was in that line of work.
My dad.
There's some schools that are pay as you go. I recommend doing that, so that way you're not contractually obligated to a company that, let's say, you might not like what they do after like 2 months.
Right. That's true. My dad, he's an aerospace engineer, and because of the current president, he has a job here in NASA area, and like, he wasn't able to get a job initially because the space program had not been rebooted. Right. And he's an older guy; he's in his 60s, so he feels like there's some ageism going on when he's applying for jobs in aerospace, but he's okay.
Sure, he's probably actually competent, and the younger people don't want him.
That's actually a lot of his complaint. Yeah, he thinks there's like massive safety regulations that have just been subverted for a lot of these airplane companies, and he's not happy with the quality of work and thinks we're going to get beat by Germany on when it comes to the airplane industry. But the the thing was like, when he, oh man, I missed what I was going to say. What was it? What we were talking about? We're talking about industry.
He's in his 60s. The industry shut down. He went back and works for NASA. My bad.
No, it's obligated to a company.
Oh yeah, obligated to a company. Right. So before NASA got rebooted with like the new space programs that they've got going on now under Trump, he decided, he was like, well, I gotta make money somehow. So he decided to go to school for trucking. And my uncle had actually been a trucker for a good portion of his life. And so my dad signed a contract with the business. I think it was like $6,000 for the school, but he didn't pay it. He said, I'll stay with y'all for 1 year, and then after that, he's free to leave or whatever. They'll give him a pay increase after that year. And so so he went to the school. He applied for a ton of jobs in the aerospace industry here in Houston. And then he goes to the school for like 6 weeks. He comes back. The day he comes back, he gets a call for a job he applied to like 3 or 4 months ago. And they hit him up and they're like, hey, we want to hire you, Houston area, where you want to live. And he is like, oh, great. And then the next day, he gets another call from another company he applied 2 months ago saying, hey, we want to hire you. And so he was ecstatic about that, because the aerospace, really, like working in the space industry, has really been his childhood dream job. And so him doing that as an engineer has been, he's super happy with his job. He's found a lot of fulfillment in it. But as soon as he accepted those other jobs, he had to cancel his contract with the trucking company he had signed up with, and he had to like pay them like $6,000 or something like that. So I can kind of see like the pay-as-you-go being relevant.
I want to say this, because this is absolutely insane. We used to make jokes where, you would have these really highly educated doctors, lawyers, engineers from like Eastern Europe and from really shitty places that would come to the United States, and they couldn't get a job doing the things that they were really good at. You have in this country right now, and a lot of people think a lot of the graduates, a lot of graduates get bogus degrees. They get recent college grads get some bogus degrees, but a lot of them are getting really good tech jobs that they were told to get, or tech education that they were told to get their entire life if they wanted to be successful, only to graduate with these great degrees in science to find themselves either underemployed or unemployed. And I just cannot believe right now we have such a misallocation of resources and human resources, that we have aerospace engineers that have to find jobs driving trucks. And we can't even build the rockets to do what we need them to do in space that we did in the 60s. We can't even, if we wanted to build the Saturn V as a country, we couldn't do it. We have to sub it out to somebody like SpaceX. It is it's insanity.
Yeah.
But yet, you've got these qualified guys. Our infrastructure is like second world quality at this point. Almost everything is C to F rated for the whole country. Instead of using these guys for that and starting, massive infrastructure projects or new defense projects or things that we're just lagging behind in the world in right now. No, these guys, they could go find a truck. And then eventually we'll automate that and these guys won't have a job at all.
Yeah.
We'll have all these crazy educated people that the government and the country needs to survive, but there will be like some sort of artificial brain drain put upon them to where they're just not utilized.
Yeah, it's really rough. I mean, it is
bizarre. Like, that's just baffles the mind.
I've got a friend who he graduated with his degree and he's been doing like sales and stuff, but he's had a tough time looking for like a job or finding a job, really. I mean, he goes job hunting. He's a very structured, very organized guy. He would actually be great to have on here, talk to him about how he does some of his life, but he has had trouble finding a sales job, and he's pretty disciplined when it comes to work. Like, he's really disciplined about it, and he's very organized, very structured, and he's had trouble finding a job. It's really bad. He's working as an Uber driver right now, and he's got a college degree, and it's like, dang, dude, that sucks. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see in the future colleges being personally liable for student loans.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, I think they've been predatory with their degree,
which means they will eliminate a lot of the majors and areas of study they offer because they know it's
not profitable.
If there's a degree that anybody can do, that means no degree is special.
Yeah,
there's memes online of like, starting pay $15 an hour, accolades required for job, master's degree.
Yeah, that's not a meme. That's true. Like, that's actually happened. Yeah.
$15 an hour for a master's degree.
Yeah, that's rough. I would feel like I wasted 6 years of my life.
Job experience required 5 years.
I've seen that too.
Yeah.
That too.
Yeah. They're just like, we need someone really competent in this spot. This is what they really are saying. Like, we don't have any competent people at this low-level position, so we need someone who's really competent, which is a little bit ridiculous because the pay doesn't match the work that would be put in. So
it's almost like companies just don't want to hire people, I think. It's like they're trolling people by doing that.
Do you think they want to become like big mafia organizations where it's like they just keep it all in the family? They're like, okay, well, we'll just use like extreme forms of nepotism where it's like it's not just like hiring your son or whatever. It's like actually building families geared towards working at that company.
I don't think so, because there's like government incentives to hire certain groups, like
diversity programs and stuff.
Yeah, so I think it's just like there is incentive. I'm not saying anybody from like the special group is incompetent. Okay, I'm just saying like there's statistics to show that not the most competent people are not being hired basically a lot by companies, and it's being incentivized. Like, look at what happened with the air traffic controllers and like what they were doing. The Obama administration was doing and incentivizing like really incapable and incompetent people to become air traffic controllers. And
terrible idea.
Yeah, and it just totally passed.
That's right. They were giving priority.
Experience.
That's right. They were giving priority to college graduates over like military members who had like 12 years experience as their traffic controller.
Priority to people who had like no business. They just came from a certain socioeconomic background or a certain demographic, had no experience at the job, and giving them priority over, qualified people who had great records. So I think you're seeing a lot of that. You're seeing like incentivized incompetence. I'm not saying one group is incompetent, another isn't, or anything like that. I'm saying that, competent people are being passed over, and many times it's an incompetent individual that's getting put in that position.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Kick out of this. The average age.
When you're an incompetent person and you have fallen upward in a corporation, you don't want anybody to point out your incompetencies, right? So who are you going to hire? You're going to hire somebody more incompetent than you, somebody that you can pass the buck and say, well, it's not me that's the problem. It's this really incompetent idiot that, I urged you to hire. But all the while, like, you're not the spotlight. Like, the spotlight's not on you, right? How incompetent you are at running the company. It's always all of these little minions you have under you that are just much, much more incompetent than you are.
You'll get a kick out of this. The American Road and Transportation Builders Association website. The average age of a structurally deficient bridge is 67 years old. 67. That means the bridge is eligible for Social Security. And it is structurally deficient.
So it should be getting welfare.
Compared to 39 years for non-deficient bridges. 41% of U.S. bridges, approximately 250,000, are over 40 years old and have not had major reconstruction work.
That's rough. That's from
the 2016 U.S. Department of Transportation analysis.
I actually met a guy who his whole job was to check bridges and see if they're like structurally sound or if they need to be rebuilt.
That'd be a scary job after reading the paragraph I just read.
I bet you never want to drive over a bridge ever again.
Dude, it makes me super nervous. There's this really big one kind of near me. And I'm just like, I hate going over it every time because it's so huge. It's so up there. If you fall down, you're in the ocean, which I guess I don't think is probably much better than concrete. No, it's on 146. It's on 146 over there in Kima.
Yeah, 146. I know.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, that's huge. That's a really tall bridge. I'm like, nah, I'm good.
I have experience traveling on that bridge a lot. Actually, I think that's actually a really well-maintained bridge, but it's one of the few.
Yeah, but it's when you look at it from a distance, it just looks so thin and so fragile. I was like, I'm driving over it and I'm thinking about that. I'm like,
I think we just have like incentivized incompetencies, and I think that now the incompetent people, obviously the incompetent people are in charge. Just look at our government.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about the current presidential administration. I'm talking like the House of Representatives and like most state houses and most bureaucracies within our government, like completely incompetent people that have just fallen upwards. And then they've made sure they've hired completely incompetent people underneath them that they can blame. It's always some low-level bureaucrat that gets the blame for obviously, a crisis of leadership and incompetent leaders.
Have you? I know I mentioned it in like private chats. Hold on, let me get this out real quick because I wanted to before I forget. I know I mentioned it in like private chats with y'all, but the 48 Laws of Power actually talks about this as being one of the laws of power. Is do not outshine the master, because if you do that, they'll get rid of you. So that's exactly what you're kind of talking about, like this bureaucratic system where. If someone proves to be more competent than the leader, what's he going to do with that guy? He's going to get rid of him because he's threatening his position.
I have a
We're looking at the complete opposite of a meritocracy right now.
It does feel like that.
There was an unwritten rule in the military. You are not allowed to drive a car or have a watch that was nicer than the commanding officer.
That's a real rule?
Like an unwritten rule.
Oh, an unwritten rule. Okay.
If you have like a nicer watch or a nicer car, then the head honcho of like the command or whatever, you're gonna make them look bad.
Would they?
Like if I was a
ridiculous.
commander and I saw like a lower level enlisted guy having like a nicer car, a nicer watch than me, I would just think he was a horrible judge of like financial, like.
Well, as far as I knew,
planning,
it applied mostly to officers, like junior officers and senior enlisted.
Gotcha,
But
gotcha. That makes
still.
sense.
Yeah. Would they be tough
okay.
on you if you did that? Would your like commanding officer be tough on you if you like outshined him?
I don't know, but that was just a rule that like I heard several times people talk about. Like, hey, I'm thinking about getting this. What about what does so and so drive? You can't get that car, man, because this person doesn't have that kind of car. So they'd be like, oh crap, all right, I'll wait till they're gone, and then get a new car or whatever.
All right then.
Back to the bridges real quick. I looked up some more info. 1 in 3 U.S. bridges needs repair or replacement. The current rate, it would take 50 years to fix all of these bridges. And guess which state is number one? Number one
Probably.
on worst. Well, correction, in percentage of structurally deficient bridges.
Illinois.
Nope.
No.
That was actually my guess, but no. Rhode Island.
Oh wow.
Wow. Okay. Not expecting that.
Yeah.
I knew it was in Illinois because I've seen this before, and they were on the like high on the list, but they weren't number one.
I remember there was like a couple of years ago, like Trump was talking about the infrastructure, or maybe it was like during his run for presidency. He was talking about how infrastructure in America is decaying, and saying bridges need to be rebuilt. And then shortly after he said that, there was like a bridge I think in Chicago that collapsed and some people died or whatever. Which was like I remember because like the media attacked him saying like, oh, we don't need all this new infrastructure, yada yada yada, and then like immediately like the day after some like CNN article or whatever like came out, like it was like a Chicago bridge collapsed and some people died, and it was like it sucked.
There's like this toxic attitude now that libertarians have definitely pushed, where any taxation for any program the government does is evil, and it's just like completely insane. And obviously the government should tax us because like if you go up to people individually and like, hey, can I have $5 to build a bridge? They're going to tell you like, no, like you can't have $5. So you obviously have to have some sort of like overarching authority to use threat of violence and taxation to get things done for the common good, right? And those same people will be like, oh, taxation is theft and this is socialism and all of this stuff. But at the same time, once a bridge gets built by a private corporation and they charge them tolls, they complain about that too.
Yeah.
So like not everybody knows what's good for them, right? And sometimes you do need like a strong leader to be like, no, this is what we're doing. It's good for everyone. Do you want your family to die because a bridge collapsed?
Yeah.
This is ridiculous.
The Vosh actually had a good way of summing this up. I know I've showed you guys Vosh before. Vosh is, for anyone who's watching and doesn't know who Vosh is, he's a left-wing extremist YouTuber. But he had a good way of putting it in where like his side of things believes in putting all the power into the people, whereas the right wing sort of puts the power into the deserved few. Which I can kind of agree with, because there's some people that are just intellectually bigger brains, and some people have better morals or morally superior, I would say. Like, not that, like, morally superior sounds weird, but they have their hearts in the right place, I would say. And that's definitely true. Like, not everyone knows what's good for them. And you can observe this among different industries. You can, like, in gaming, you can observe that a lot. Like everyone kind of will, well, not everyone, but a lot of people will make decisions or choices, say XYZ needs to be changed and it only benefits them, and they never really have consideration for how that affects the game or the population or the business model or anything like that. And that's exactly how real life kind of works. People, they will make selfish changes that aren't necessarily good for the majority of people. And
if we if we don't invest in the common good, like things won't move. We won't be able to ship packages. Imagine like you're sending a really precious family heirloom off somewhere to get repaired, and the bridge collapses and your stuff's gone forever.
Yeah.
Like that personally makes you feel very bad to think about that. Like you should think like that. That's how you should think, because it's going to happen to somebody. Somebody's going to lose something precious, whether it's material things or like something more serious like a family member, because we're not taking care of each other. We're supposed to be a people. A people takes care of each other.
Guess.
Yeah.
Can you guys guess which states are the top 5 for the best or least amount of structurally deficient bridges?
Florida.
Anywhere that has like very solid bedrock as the foundation for their structures. So I would say like states that have great bedrock and stuff like that. I would say like the Northeast, the far Northeast, New England.
I'll say like Florida,
as the
Texas,
Yeah.
Arizona.
Florida ranks number 47,
So that's pretty bad.
but that's as a percentage of inventory. But their number of bridges that are bad, they're ranked 35.
So not good.
Vermont is 48th. Utah is 49th. Arizona is 50. Texas is 51.
Whoa.
Texas is 51.
Are we
There's
counting
an
Puerto
asterisk
Rico?
on that because
Yeah, like
yes, yeah, Puerto Rico's
Okay.
on here, and what's the other territory on here? District of Columbia.
okay.
But Texas is number 22 for the total number of bridges that are.
I bet DC is like the top. One of the top. The DC area.
Yeah, DC, they're like in the top 10 for best.
Yeah.
And then
I
number 1 overall for best bridges is Nevada.
Wow. That's that mafia money.
Nevada.
getting-
They only have, yeah, the casino money. They don't mess around. They only have 26 bridges that are considered structurally deficient in the whole state.
Wow. Well,
So
it's
really
also there's not a whole lot of mechanical erosion going on in Nevada. You know, there's not a whole lot of precipitation, and there's not a whole lot of extremes.
Only Hawaii and Nevada and District of Columbia and Delaware are in the double digits for number of bridges deficient, and Vermont and Utah. Everywhere else has mid to high triple digits or in the low thousands.
That doesn't make me feel safe driving.
And no, it doesn't.
No, so like Texas is abysmal, and I will tell you this: I had a job long time ago that had me out on highways traveling late at night, where I could like get a really good look. A lot of times during the day, there's so many cars and then you can't get a really good look at the infrastructure or like the overpasses and stuff in Houston. And after the big drought in 2011, dudes, there was massive cracks in all of the newly constructed beltway and outer loop pylons and structures of all of the bridges. I mean, massive cracking, like mortar coming off in places. And it's apparent that this has really occurred because every once in a while you'll hear a story about how, like, on I-10, a bridge had a giant hole in it, you know, and they had to go shut it down and fix it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, like, Rami can attest to this. Every once in a while, a bridge gets a massive hole on it on like a major highway.
It's happened
in the
on
middle of town.
45. Yeah.
Yeah,
That
and they'll
is
have to go and
not
shut the whole
good.
thing down and repair it. No, it's terrible. Eventually, like something bad is going to happen because of it. And I saw these horrible cracks, and people made a really bad stink about it. And then what did they do? I don't know. Maybe this fixed it. Maybe it didn't. But they just painted over them.
If you actually Google. Yeah. Oh boy.
Oh
that's
man,
bad.
that's
I
bad.
know every time there's a hurricane here, the barges get loose and ram into the I-10 between New Orleans and Houston, so they got to shut it down.
Yeah, so like literally I-10 has been shut down the last like several years, many times, because barges have gotten loose because of flooding and smashed into a bridge. Do they rebuild the whole bridge?
Hey,
Nope.
there's a hurricane coming. There's a hurricane coming. Pick which artery in your body doesn't get blood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the brutal part. That's how I actually think about transportation in the U.S. Is I think about it as like arteries and veins, just transporting oxygen everywhere. Yeah.
So let's talk about another type of infrastructure. Let's talk about the tech industry and the internet and tech censorship.
All right, let's do that. That sounds fun. I'm ready to roast our Google overlords. So
I am going to make a stand that a private company, and I'm not going to give the laws because I don't remember them off the top of my head. I used to, like literally a month ago, and I've studied this for a long time, but you can go look them up for yourself. And so it's illegal for a tech company like Google or Twitter or Facebook to violate someone's First Amendment rights. Why is that? Like, why should we not have to just go make our own Google, go make our own Facebook, go make our own YouTube, like libertarians and the like say? Well, because that's not how that works. Like, a big group of people in the United States cannot shout over you and commit a heckler's veto when you're speaking. Like, there has been rules and legislation applied to this. You know, you cannot use your First Amendment rights to silence somebody else. That is a Ninth Amendment issue. So what we did back in the day, and this actually did occur with the phone companies before they were more heavily regulated. The phone companies would just, if somebody said something bad or they talked about unionizing the lines or lines workers or whatever, or they had competing business interests, the phone companies in that area would have their operators listen to these things and then just yank. They just yank the cord, like disconnection. It was a bad deal. It didn't happen very much, to be very honest with you, but it happened enough to make a problem, and people realized that, no, you cannot violate people's rights. Like, if the government cannot violate your rights, a private company can't do it either. Why? Because the government can just outsource the violation of your rights to a private company if they want to. Okay? So just because the government can't do it doesn't mean they can't give incentives to big corporations to completely violate your rights. If that starts to occur, it doesn't matter if you have a Bill of Rights or not. The government will relinquish more and more control over its assets to private corporations so that they can manipulate your rights and totally subvert your freedoms. This is a bad thing. And our ancestors were educated enough to recognize this, and they got all of these cartel and communication laws passed against these giant conglomerates to prevent them from violating your rights. And they specifically cited public utilities and phone lines in these laws, right?
Telecommunications.
So, right. So fast forward, if we still use dial-up and Facebook and all of these companies, and they would have never tried this back when we used dial-up, if they silenced you, they're no different than any other. I mean, at some point, Facebook and Google and these tech conglomerates are going to be like portals to hop on the internet, and you won't be able to really get on and use the internet without your login. We're already seeing this. How do you want to log into this new system you've never gotten onto before? Do you want to use your Google identity or do you want to use your Facebook identity? That's going to become overarching one day, and that's how you're going to have to access everything. Well, if you make them mad, guess what? You're not using the internet. That's a serious problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so if this had occurred when we were still using dial-up, somebody would have been able to use these old laws and say, no, these are public utilities. I am paying for my own violation of my civil rights to these corporations right now, not in just the terms of paying dues to them, but I'm actually paying tax dollars to provide this infrastructure. All of our lines and all of our internet was bought and paid for by you. You bought and paid for all of it. It was the public utilities back in the day that you paid taxes toward to build all of these things, and then DARPA and the Defense Department built out our internet infrastructure. And everything exists because our tax dollars collectively built out this internet infrastructure to provide our citizens better ways to communicate and conduct commerce, but it was originally about defense. So what you're paying for in taxes is your own censorship, which is completely illegal. And these corporations no longer pay taxes. They actually get tax returns, or they get tax credits to silence you. and to completely just violate your civil rights. This is a real problem. We need to be holding these people accountable. Just because they're not using the phone lines to do it doesn't mean they're not using your public utilities, things that you pay for, and they're violating your civil rights. And just always keep in mind, if somebody wants to shut you down and say, well, they're a private company, they can do whatever they want, then private companies can just be outsourced to violate your civil rights anytime the government doesn't like what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And this sets a precedent to end up enslaving you and making you no better than a serf or any other sort of actually, you would be worse off than a feudal peasant, because at least if you were a feudal peasant somewhere, you could get your count's ear or your king's ear every once in a while and go to court and directly engage with this person. You're never going to be able to do that in this society.
Yeah, that's absolutely
and you lived
true.
where you worked.
Yeah. Yeah, your overlord literally lives in a house down the street from you, and you could be like, this is bullshit. You know, you're completely stepping on me and treating me like crap. And like, I know we have this weird mentality that like all kings and things are like evil, and like monarchy and aristocracy was all evil and hated their people. That's like totally not true. There would be a peasants' revolt, and the peasants would actually kill these people. This occurred in history. Like, it was within it's a contract, the social contract. It's within the government's interest to respect the governed and to provide for them and their welfare. And the government provides a service.
It's like pulling up into a gas station.
And certainly outside, in our current system, in this technocracy that's being built, you will never have that. The social contract is dead.
Your camera disappeared.
Yeah, well, I mean, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but your camera disappeared.
Oh, his camera's on mine.
Yeah, it's just you, bud.
Weird.
It's all good. Don't worry about it.
But yeah, you raised a really good point. It is a huge problem. And I think the reason they like to do it is because it does seem like they want the future to be like WALL-E. Unironically, like fat people on flying boards, just dependent on technology that they create. No, I'm serious. Like they're just in these like flying little chairs, hover chairs, and they're fat and sipping on soda all day and like
sipping on soda and masturbating to weird porn.
Yeah, exactly. Just totally like
totally
numbed. Yeah, just like totally numbed out. So you'll just accept whatever propaganda they want to feed you. And the thing is, the reason they have to censor
rum and coke.
You ever?
The reason they have to censor is because, like, the meritocracy in terms of ideas is real and it works. Like sharing our ideas, telling people the truth, combating the lies, which is actually, it is really like it's a good sign, because one of my worries was, we're in this information age where millennials and teenagers, Gen Z, they all have access to the internet, and at their fingertips, they can just type in, whatever they want to learn and like start learning it and like learning about it, whether it be history or some sort of technical skill or whatever. Like it could be math. It doesn't matter what it is. If you want to learn something, it's on the internet. And I was worried that people would have trouble sifting through BS and lies in order to get to like the truth, to a more effective life, have a happier, more fulfilling life. And what I'm learning is that people must have been doing a pretty good job of sifting through BS and lies, because if they weren't, then there would be no need to censor us or censor anybody preaching like in the same vein as we are. So it is interesting to me that censorship is required under this technocracy, because they cannot establish what they want to establish when ideas that are in opposition to them are freely said and freely shared. So it is.
Propaganda was working. Censorship wouldn't be required at all, just like you said.
Yeah.
Instead of having a better argument, they just bye.
Well, it's impossible. It's impossible to have a better argument against like the objective truth of being human and how to live a good life and how to have a fulfilling life. It is hard to beat that, because once it takes hold in people and like their lives change, their hearts change, and they want to tell other people how to have a good life like them. And then they spread the word.
This is why they didn't allow reading way back when.
Yeah. So it's honestly, like, not allowing reading. It reminds me, it's basically modern day book burning, is what they're doing.
Yeah.
In Rome, the Roman Empire, only the nobility and the people that served the state were allowed to have exercise equipment.
Really?
Slaves were not allowed to have exercise equipment or use it.
I don't think that was about, like, okay, so first off, your slave did like serious manual labor, and actually a Roman slave ate pretty good. So these people were pretty jacked, but if they had exercise equipment, you can injure yourself like with exercise equipment pretty seriously, and then you can't work. I don't actually think that was about like preventing a slave uprising, because you got to remember these people are out there with like scythes and pitchforks and crap, like, so they have like serious weapons, and they also had some serious privilege. Like, Roman slaves actually many times of the year had holidays and were treated pretty nice. And that's why you don't see very many slave rebellions. Like, there was one major one in Rome, and that's, I mean, you don't see a whole lot of them over the history of Rome, relatively speaking. But I think it's more about preventing injury. But certainly throughout time and civilization, people have they have had access to information restricted to them to prevent them from questioning the status quo. I actually think that being functionally illiterate and being bombarded with a ton of disinformation, or just tons of information in general, and not being able to decipher what is which, is almost like a functional illiteracy, because you atomize everyone and nobody can get together a coherent thought in unison to reject or to present alternatives to the problems they're facing. So I actually think drowning in information is just as bad as, especially when a huge amount of it is complete disinformation, if not the vast majority. And, you know, I think that's basically worse than being illiterate, because an illiterate man has to observe his natural world in a way that provides a great amount of common sense, and he's in touch with society in a way that's very implicit, right? If you're not so capable of complex communications, you have to really be able to pick up on people's body language and the implicit nature of communication. And that's something people have completely lost. They've lost the ability to decipher doublespeak, or newspeak, or body language, or social cues, and we become kind of out of touch with reality. But I would agree with Rami. I think our age group has done a pretty good job at picking up on the BS, because if we hadn't, they wouldn't have to completely, they're just basically going back to source on the brainwashing of the younger generations, and they're just completely bombarding them with just unhealthy and, you know, unsafe practices and teachings, and just really bizarre new age thought processes. And I mean, you're just seeing them get hit from it with it at, like, you know, age 2.
Yeah, it is true. One thing I learned about this week is what they call banner blindness. You familiar with that term? Yeah, so banner blindness is basically like people have developed this blindness to advertising when it comes to like web pages. So they'll be on like a news article and there's like a banner on the side, and like they don't even look at it. It doesn't even faze them. They've become completely immune to advertising. And I feel like that's a lot that's almost kind of like where our generation was headed. If not for censorship, and like mass media lies. Like, I mean, it is outright lying to the people. I mean, you can pick up like a Cosmopolitan magazine or just look online at their articles, and it's like lie after lie after lie about how to destroy yourself. And I feel like our generation was really starting to ramp up in this sort of banner blindness of ideas that are bad for you. and some still buy into these bad ideas. But I think had there been no censorship, had there been no censorship, they would have started winning over people that were buying into this, that weren't banner blind to these ideas, essentially, right? And it would overall take over, like it would improve tons of people's lives, and it would really put people on the same page ideologically to a certain extent, not necessarily like religion, but at least in terms of their country and how they feel about their fellow man. But that's why they had to censor, right? Like, I don't think, I think back to the past on like what certain people were crucified for, like Dan Quayle when he was running as like vice president or whatever, I forget for which candidate. He could not spell potato. He added an E at the end of it, and the media crucified him for it. And it's like, imagine if they had that much control today. Would we have Trump as president? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Twitter has been like a massive boon for the president, and like, I don't even know what would happen because Joe Biden can't go 5 minutes without making like an incoherent sentence. So it's like the social media thing, it really, like, it's so important not to censor it. I don't understand when libertarians talk about, like, Joe Jorgensen, total corporatist, by the way. In my opinion, I think she's a corporatist. She like was talking a few months ago about how like, we don't need to like fight censorship on big tech platforms and yada yada yada, they're a private company, whatever, nonsense. And then like a week ago or so, or whenever, like just after that, she's talking about libertarians being censored off social media, off Twitter. And it's like, of course, because your ideas, I know, it's like, of course your libertarians are getting censored because a lot of what you say is in opposition to what big tech companies want. So of course they're going to censor you.
Poison your water? Don't worry. Under my policy, you can smoke weed.
Yeah, exactly. We can deregulate everything. We can breathe toxic fumes and drink poison, and it'll be awesome.
It's okay, because under my healthcare plan, you can smoke weed
and do heroin.
Yeah.
And if you're feeling particularly bad, you can hire a prostitute. No big deal.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point, and it's something. It's a foundational Western principle, and it's the notion of the tripartite soul, right? And I'm not going to get into the details of the tripartite soul and the philosophy behind it, but there's three parts to the soul, basically, and it's the base and primal self that is very much about self-gratification and materialism and primal urges. Then you have the higher self, the second higher self, the second higher self, which is like seeking the betterment of man or society to achieve eternal glory. This is often in the past through military exploits or great achievements or something like that. But not always, but mostly rejecting the material in order to obtain this. So like a very Spartan existence, right? And then you have the logistikos, or like the highest order, which was to reject all of that. And in Buddhism, these people basically reject all of these things to basically attain enlightenment, So to seek knowledge and betterment and education to provide themselves and others maybe with enlightenment or a better form of existence. That's like really in a nutshell, and I probably didn't do a very good job of explaining that. But I feel like our generation, and there's a lot made about our generation, like you have Generation Kill, you've got, the various documentaries about like the wars in the Middle East and, personal, first responders and stuff like their personal sacrifices in this country. And our age group really did, in kind of a big way, we were influenced by really provocative guerrilla journalists back in the day, and that really did expose corporatism and materialism and corruption and fraud, environmental toxins, just kind of showing how poisoned our system had become in all aspects. And our generation really did kind of push off materialism, and they tried their damnedest with like MTV and everything else, but like I really don't know anybody that was greatly affected by any of that stuff, to be quite honest with you. And it seemed to be that we were very anti-material and that we were seeking kind of a better way. We didn't always question things to be edgy or rebellious or because we were angsty. It was like we genuinely saw perhaps a better way of doing things. And so we for a long time, you saw sales, the previous generations and many of our parents was just constant consumer cycles and purchasing and credit cards. We saw in the previous generations just tons of credit card debt and racking up debt to try to satisfy this base man. And I don't know many millennials that even have credit cards. The largest form of millennial debt comes in, student loans. So it was trying to find that, higher purpose, that higher calling, that education. But our consumer trends were abysmal. So what happens? How do the corporations deal with that? Well, capitalism, moralizing the material, trying to provide virtue and a higher meaning behind slave labor and pollution and environmental toxins. And they've done a pretty good job capturing the younger generations with that. They constantly, even the Gen Zs who are out there like burning down cities, it's constantly millennials this, millennials that. And I heard like a news report that, graduating new 21-year-old or 22-year-old graduating millennials are still picking dumb degrees. It's like, sorry, guy, 22-year-old is not a millennial. Like, I'm right in the middle of the millennial generation, and there are millennials from 40. There are millennials basically to 25, but there's no 22-year-old or 18-year-old. I think we were actually talking about 18-year-olds that were entering college picking dumb degrees. Is what it was actually.
Yeah, that'd be Gen Z.
Those are Gen Zs, and they are really destructive, and they believe really destructive things. But we see this very strange moralizing of the material, and I think it's very effeminate. Because it's just I got into an argument. It's interesting. This is like a side note, but I got into an argument with a guy online the other day. And one of my friends chimed in, who's a great guy.
Always a great idea, online arguments.
Yeah, horrible. I'm actually my new posting method is just fire and forget. Like, I'm going to make a post and just never look at it again, to be honest with you. But, he attacked my friend and was like, I make more money than you ever could have dreamed of. And like, my friend is a vet. He was on the deck of an aircraft carrier, was a cop. And immediately this guy's masculinity goes to his material and goes to his material wealth, whereas my friend has like actually risked his life and gone, foot to ass with evil before in his life, and had since youth. And I was just like, what a effeminate and emasculating way to argue. I'm immediately threatened by your position, so I'm going to attack you in regards to your finances and material wealth. Like that's the only value you provide to the society. That
money is religion.
Sorry. Side note. Done.
Yeah.
I think that's really funny.
It was bad, and I like immediately messaged my friend, and I was like, "How effeminate is that?" And my friend hadn't ever really thought about it, and he was like, "Yeah, that actually really is." Hold on one second.
Yeah, it's like whenever I'll wait for him to get back. He's muted. I don't think he can hear us. He's probably talking to someone. Oh, I'll just say it anyway since you're here, Roland. It's like whenever girls on the internet, like if you're arguing with them about anything, hold on, he's about to be back. There you go. You're back. Right. Yeah, so I was like saying that reminds me.
People argue.
That reminds me of like, arguing with certain women on the internet. It's not all women. But it's definitely a lot of women, it seems like, because a lot of women, they're not caring about, they're not really delving into the like books and history like I would say like Roland is, or you are, Quinn, or even myself. A lot of women aren't. There are some women like Ann Coulter who do, but not a whole lot of them. Their just interests are not in line with like, I guess, men's interests for whatever reason. And anyways, so like women will counteract your arguments or whatever by calling you like a virgin or an incel or whatever. And it's like, when you say that, what you're saying is that as a woman, your only value to add is your vagina, and that's it. Like you're just a sex object in your own mind. Like
Yeah.
like that's
And
weird.
actually, I have a whole diatribe about this, and Roland has heard it, and I want to have a show about gender roles and how they are natural and it wasn't created by the patriarchy or some sort of artificial governmental structure. Like this was actually a thing that naturally evolved, and how women's arguments of power are basically, well, I can kind of just go into it if you want, but I'll let you finish your point.
There's like a meme of like a bunch of middle-aged liberal women complaining about like, you know, a foreign country being like, you know, a harmful dictatorship, you know, that spreads propaganda. Then it was like, you know, 2 days later, they're like running down the street, all matching costumes, like, you know, trying to, you know, enforce or project their social norm onto everyone else, whether or not they want to see it or not, you know, as just a visceral image, you know, that's like, well, I don't need to see that, but okay.
Yeah.
So like, you know, whatever. The meme is, you know, they're doing the exact same thing that they accuse someone else of doing.
But
Yeah.
I think I'm going to save my gender roles discussion for another time, unless y'all just like really want me to do it.
We'll
Roman,
save
that's really
it.
weird, and I don't recommend getting into internet arguments.
I mean, I love it, man.
These
I
people,
love getting into
so.
internet arguments. Like some people, it stresses them out, makes them feel bad or whatever. But my apathy towards attitudes on the internet is pretty high. I mean, like the thing is like I'll engage in like debate or whatever with people on the internet, and I get sometimes pretty brutal because they get upset when you, like, I don't know, I think it was you, Quentin, that linked us to that guy discussing how people feel when they hear like political, like opposing political ideologies or whatever, how they feel like their life is being threatened. So people get really ugly. And I've seen it from both sides.
Their life is being threatened?
Yeah, like their life is being threatened. Like they're taking as a threat on their life. Like their brain registers it that way. Like they may not say that out loud. Well, actually, some of them will say that out loud. Like they'll say like transgender people will say, well, by voting for Trump, you're trying to like kill transgender people. But like, you know, obviously that's not true. But like they do take it as a threat on their life, which is, I guess, where like some of the left gets their like silence is violence and opposition, like, or language is violence kind of idea. But anyways, so like they will just argue with you up until a certain point, and then it's like, well, actually, I'm going to deny you my holes. How about that? And you're just like, okay, so you recognize your value is for reproductive purposes, and
well,
apparently
they do and don't. It's like it's a really complicated, twisted psychology.
It's like cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One time I was in a class, and this teacher it was like a 2-hour class. Teacher talked for an hour about like this guy who married, you know, this famous person in history, and they got, you know, and he married after certain things that this person accomplished in life, and the whole story was like 30 minutes or like an hour long, and it was all happy, you know, nothing was bad, like no one died, no one got killed, or, you know, got like some crazy disease, you know, from like, you know, super long time ago. And at the end, this girl like raised her hand. She's like, so like, does that mean the girl was raped? And yet, like, it was a happy story about marriage and stuff. And like, all of us just like looked at her like, what? Where did you get that from? And we were just including the teacher. The teacher was just like, what? All of us, we were just really confused.
That actually cracks me up.
I think this like we've naturally kind of led into our next topic, which is
family and relationships.
Yeah. And so, okay, so I'm going to kind of touch on my spiel because I think it's important. I'm married, so I can speak on this.
Not really.
I think
spiel,
it's
not Not married.
So if a woman only values a man for how he can provide her a euphoric hormone gratification cycle, this it's no different than the same hit that narcotics provide you, right? Sexual activity. It's no different. She doesn't actually love you. She just loves the way you make her feel every once in a while. So there's no love in that relationship. And a woman that really prizes that about you, don't get me wrong, it's nice to be able to satisfy your partner and stuff like that, and provide each other satisfaction. But that really shouldn't be like the most important part of any sort of relationship, because you don't love each other at that point. You love the way you make each other feel when you're engaged in intercourse, right? So it is a drug or addiction cycle. It's really no different. And you're like, no, that's not true. It's totally different. No, it's like you get the same result from watching porn, right? So in masturbating and achieving orgasm that way, and we all know that provides the same dopamine feedback system as like cocaine addiction,
right?
So or worse. So it's no different. Your relationship is not good for you if that is how you are valuing each other. And there will be no loyalty in that relationship. One of y'all will end up cheating on each other, no doubt, because there's always a bigger fish. There's always something better. You can always find like something that fulfills you in that moment. Maybe your definition of attraction changes over time and you want to go with something else. So there's no loyalty there. There's nothing it's built upon. Talking about power dynamics in a relationship, and let's touch on this just briefly. Women don't have power, okay? And this is a really controversial thing to say. This is going to get all sorts of people mad at me, but they don't. And I'm not saying abuse women. I'm not saying women aren't something that you should respect and cherish or should treat like crap or you shouldn't listen to. None of that, okay? They don't have real power, okay? Let's talk about primordial power for a second. Let's say all of this is gone, okay? Who's in charge? Despite completely exceptional women out there who could probably beat the crap out of me, most women cannot, and they're not stronger and they're not bigger, and that is the nature of primordial power. Like the essence of power is violence. It really is, or it's the threat of violence to achieve some sort of action or result, right? I'm sorry. I'm not saying beat your wife. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not talking about marriage here at the moment, okay? This is just talking about power and power dynamics between men and women. Women don't have power. And so when you tell that to a woman, she said, oh yeah, well, I'll tell you what, I can get what I want because I'll usually withhold sex. That's the first thing generally they'll go to, is they'll withhold from you and you won't be getting any. I'm going to get mine. Fine. You still don't have power. Even if you get a man to do what you want from that point of view, you are still objectifying yourself, and your power only lies in how a man views you and the gratification he can achieve in engagement with you. So you're still arguing your power dynamic inside of the male power dynamic. So again, you're without power. The second way a woman can get power is through treachery. Like, well, he's got to sleep sometime or something like that. So poisoning somebody isn't achieving power. If we lived in a tribe, right, and you poisoned the chief and it was like, yeah, his wife poisoned him, or his mistress or concubine, or this random woman who wanted to like put her son forward as the king went in there and poisoned him, they're not gonna be like, that's our new queen. They're gonna be like, burn her. It's not gonna go in your favor, and your son's not gonna become the new king. There's probably gonna be problems, or chief or whatever. Like, that isn't real power. Power is taken. And so the ways women achieve power are through treachery or through transfer of power. And I don't believe anything that isn't earned over precedent and throughout time in blood and hardship is respected in such a way that power achieved by those means is. So a person who's had power transferred to them and has basically had this continuity of power transfer based on a single incidents or a series of incidents of violent behaviors that were very costly, they don't respect that as much as the first person who attained power out of that struggle. Like, that person who attained that power out of that serious struggle is going to be like, whoa, you know, I'm going to respect this office. I'm going to respect the seat. Like it was just horrible to try to get this. But a person who's transferred that power probably respects it much less. Even if they've had to go through those challenges, a person who's had to go through challenges like that is probably going to respect it a lot more. But let's face it, historically, women haven't had to do those things to achieve power, right? And they probably don't go around beating each other in really awful ways. And, you know, they've probably been in very limited, like, physical altercations, and probably been in very few life or death situations, except maybe childbirth. And I would say that women who have gone through that probably really do respect their mortality and dynamics of society and relationships in a way that women who haven't, but you know, can't appreciate. And you see that generally women who are married and have children are much better, in my opinion, much better adjusted than, you know, like single cat ladies that are always hair on fire.
Yeah, like that was a meme on 4chan for a while. It was like the cool why not? Because there's all this information about, you know, don't get married, work your way up the corporate ladder. I don't know why a woman would ever want to do that. It's so destructive. And then, like, you know, when you're in your 40s, travel the planet and drink wine all the time. Like, that sounds like a real fulfilling life. Just kill yourself. That sounds horrible.
Well, you basically reject the things that you are biologically superior at, like the thing that you really do beat men at, and only you can do, and you should be revered for being able to do these things. Men are not very good at nurturing. We're not really very good at raising children by ourselves. We certainly can't bring life into this world. A woman can bring life into this world. And you're like, all that stuff? Nah, forget that. I'm going to make PowerPoints. And we're going to have a meeting.
Make PowerPoints.
Because I got to make money, because that's how women have power. It's, again, back to this materialism as the highest virtue and the highest order.
Yeah. I mean, I'm laughing because, oh man, making PowerPoints. I don't know. It just seems ridiculous to me to, like, just pursue this meaningless nonsense. I don't know. Women are.
I mean, and then women are like, I don't know why I'm not fulfilled. Like, they're unhappy. That's why they drink wine. That's why you have your wine on. They're not really happy. They're not. Soma.
Yeah.
And they're like, I'm just, you know, I'm looking for this type of fulfillment. And they chase it all around the world. And at the end, they become really angry, bitter people who are jealous of people who had families. And it's like, maybe what you did was self-sabotage the whole time. And you thought it was awesome because you had money, and that's power now, right?
There are feminists.
Money is the religion.
There are feminists that have come out and said, like, they were hardcore feminists in, like, the 70s and 80s. And they're like, you know what? This was a terrible mistake. And they've come out, and I forget the names, but it was like some elderly ladies, like they were like in their 70s, coming out and saying, actually what we advocated for was the destruction of the female. Like, it was just like destruction of women's, it just eroded the women's soul. And that's what it's done a lot of.
My wife has a ton of power in my family because she does come at things from a completely unique perspective, and she brought my child and my future children into this world, right? I mean, I can't say enough positive about my wife, and I always consider her and her opinions in my family. Women in the workforce, I don't care. I don't care what type of money you make. I don't care what your job title is. There are a bunch of men underneath you that resent you and just completely ignore everything that comes out of your mouth and think that you got your position because of affirmative action. Like, you have power in title and somebody granted that to you, but the glass ceiling exists for a reason, and you don't break through that glass ceiling because nobody really respects your power in this environment. But, like, women who have families and have children, I'm sorry, like, they're greatly respected. And there is this Hollywood, and there was some truth to it for sure, this Hollywood kind of meme about, like, the nuclear family being some sort of, you know, like, abusive thing or something like that. Don't get me wrong, like, men beat their wives back in the day, and, like, there's been some improvement in that aspect, and I'm sure men still beat their wives, but it's always been a minority. A majority of men haven't been to jail for spousal abuse. Yeah. And it's like, and then the feminists will be like, well, majority of men just haven't been caught. That's nonsense.
That's absolute nonsense. Oh my gosh. You have to be really deluded to believe stuff like that.
Now you've got, you know, cell phone cameras, and anybody can pick up the phone. get out of here. Back when it was like I had to crank up the party line, maybe, I don't know. But that's total nonsense today. And in all reality, the nuclear family was toxic anyway, because it was an escape from your clan or your extended family. That was an accountable structure. And I promise you, if some sort of spoiled dude beat his wife and treated her like crap, there was some man somewhere that would have tuned his ass up.
For sure, 100%.
Family.
Yeah, it's a sad state. Like the modern.
Why would you want to do that though?
Beat your wife?
No, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, like you're gonna live with someone and you're gonna want to beat them up. Like that doesn't. I don't know. That never has made sense to me.
Yeah, like that woman really does have access to your food and all sorts of crap. And if she does something to you, I'm not saying she's justified in killing you or something. That's not what I was saying. But like that probably did occur back in the day too. Like women poisoning their husbands and stuff because they were abusive. Like they have an incentive to get rid of you. You were a threat and you're dangerous and you were not cherishing your wife. Like you were not respecting her. You were a monster.
Aren't there like TV shows that have done like? There's TV shows that have done like social experiments in public where like a guy gets abusive like in public, like there's people everywhere. And then everyone like, white knights and like, comes and protects the woman and like, you get out of here, calls the cops, whatever. But then the opposite, where like the woman does it to a man in public, no one sticks up for the guy.
Yeah.
No one.
Yeah.
So I'm going to touch on gender roles because a lot of people are going to think, well, gender roles were formed by violence or something like that. And we're talking about monogamy in relationships. I'm going to touch on this. Gender roles were not probably formed by violence. Okay. When you sit through an anthropology class, and I had to sit through a bunch of biological and different types of anthropology classes in college, because at one point I was going to go to med school. And they always tell you little things to try to like defeat the patriarchy. Like, women collect more nutrients in the form of carbohydrates than men do out hunting deer. Okay? That's totally true. Not even going to debate that. Deer are small. Our gender roles in our civilization predates the modern era. It goes back to the era of megafauna. Okay? And I'm sorry, like a woman is not going to collect enough freaking tubers and cattails to make up for the caloric difference between that and a mammoth. Okay? When you and your hunting party are running herds of mammoths off cliffs and like taking mountains of meat out of that area, that's where you're getting your primary sustenance. And that's where our gender roles were formed. How did that happen? Why aren't women hunters? Why aren't women warriors? At some point in time, anthropology insists that society might have been matriarchal because people didn't really know how babies were made and that women just birthed life and women were like the source of life. That's very disputed and nobody really knows if that's true. But I will say that women, that is when fundamentally we began to revere women as a very important, obviously, element of society, because we were starting to determine what was man and what was the human and what was society and kind of shape our worldview, right? And this human brings life into the world.
Yeah.
So she also nurtures life. She also feeds life. And women can have more than one children. Women can feed children with their bodies. If a woman was to be a warrior, if she was to be a hunter and she was to go out and risk her life in very dangerous activities, even just some basic early civilizational jobs, then you're not just taking one person out of the reproduction equation. You're potentially taking out a multitude of children. And maybe she has twins. Maybe she just has one child. Women probably nursed for each other's children a lot back in those days. So you're starving a future generation, or you're taking multiple people out of the equation. When you have tribes and they're all competing for scarce resources and they're
Roland cut out for anyone else? Or no, you're here. Q cut out.
And you're not valuing your women.
Yeah, Quentin cut out very shortly.
Your camera turned off or something. I don't know. I see you in like this pose. I hear you, but you're like this pose. It's like doing Thriller.
Am I back?
I mean, I hear you, but I don't see you. I mean, you're just stuck like this. So I would just turn off your camera and turn it back on again.
My internet's good, so give me 1 second.
Okay.
There you are.
How about now?
You're about. Yep.
How
There
about
you
now?
are. You're good.
Good. So I don't know where I stopped, but basically, women were revered because and they were seen as treasured. Women are not allowed to do certain things, not because like there have been great warriors, there have been exceptions, there have been great huntresses. There are exceptions to this rule, but it's seen as immoral and unjust to take the future mothers of your civilization or your society and force them to risk their lives. Obviously, it's just it's a misallocation of resources, because how are you going to continue to grow and prosper if all of your women are dead?
Yeah. And one of the things is like, I do see some like trad women, like traditional women. And I think you guys are familiar with Lauren Southern, right?
Sure.
Yeah, Lauren Southern, living the trad life. She gave up her lifestyle of being a journalist and working and all this stuff,
Yeah.
and decided she wanted to get married and be a mom, which is
Yeah.
totally admirable. And I think she's like my age. She's like 30. And one of the things I see is like on Twitter, and I know Twitter isn't like the real world necessarily, but it is a small representation of the real world.
You don't say.
Yeah. I see women getting flack on the internet for being like trad models. Like, they're not taking like model Instagram photos or anything like that. They're just
Right.
posting pictures of them being a mom and like being a good wife and stuff like that.
That's truly beautiful.
It is. It is.
like the girls grabbing the hammer, going up to the windows in Beverly Hills or Malibu in LA, and then having their boyfriends take a picture of them. And
I
then they
saw
say, like,
that. That was
protests
ridiculous.
or whatever. It
Yeah.
was all on video. Some guy just happened to be recording and turned. And he goes, "What are they doing over there?" And there's like a girl with like a hammer or something like that.
Yeah.
Or like another girl getting out of a super luxurious car. And then someone takes like two quick photos, and then boom, they hop in the car and drive away. Like,
Isn't it funny how it really is rich kids doing all of this destruction?
Yeah.
yeah.
It is
Like,
kind of funny. It's because they've never had to value property in their life. Everything has been replaceable for them. They don't understand the value of like somebody's car. That car isn't just a representation of like currency, or it's a representation of man hours gone into earning that car or building or window or whatever it is. But back to the relationships thing, I wanted to talk about monogamy. And like how important it is, because I've seen this like rising idea among the left that the incest is okay when it comes to like brother and sister. Cousin is like debatable. Oh, I got a notification. Whoops. Anyways, there's like this idea that incest is okay, and it's total nonsense. Like, I've heard Destiny defend it. I'm not sure if Vosh has defended it or not, but like saying that it's okay to have like friends with benefits, that is like your sister or brother, as long as you're not reproducing, because reproducing, has a lot of risks for like birth defects and whatnot. But I don't see how that's any kind of good when you are eroding that relationship with your brother or sister, that trust. Because monogamous relationships, really, first of all, let's establish why monogamous relationships are good. First of all, we know that the optimal parenting setup is one man, one woman, married together, and mother staying at home, man going to work. Like, the nuclear family really is like optimal for like the development of children, right? Like, that should be at the very basics. Like, this hyper individualism America has appealed to in the modern day is awful. Really, we should have.
I would like to say this to not to counter signal you, because I agree, but the nuclear family itself was the foundational premise on which everyone was atomized, because the nuclear family is this individualized family, kind of like off in the suburbs.
So you're talking about generational families being better, right?
Right. And because like the nuclear kind of like off in the suburbs, we moved to go to work, that entire thing, first off, your entire area may have been completely sold out by like corporatism and bad legislation. That's why you had to move in the first place. And then basically this new idea of this nuclear family being proposed as like a virtue was just a cope to deal with all of these displaced people, like during the period like the Grapes of Wrath and like the Great Depression and stuff like that. But I agree, like a coherent family, multi-generational family, or you don't even have to have multiple generations living in your house, but living within your familial area where you have intentionally set up settlements with your family, like that is the basis of all civilization.
Yeah.
And like in Europe, this isn't even debatable because the towns are so small and everything's so close together. You live really close to your family anyway.
Yeah. So nuclear family, it's not the traditional way it's been, right? Generational families, that's like how they would do it, like over in Egypt. That's how I've seen it done here in America with like some of my Egyptian family. That's how I've seen it done actually with some American families where they take their elderly parents and they've, got the elderly parents, the parents of the kids, so on and so forth. Anyways, but we do need the 2-parent home at the very least. And you also need to have that generational family. You need like you said, they don't necessarily need to live in your house, but they do need to be in the area. Like it necessarily not need to be, but it is preferable that they are in the area, because if they're not in the area, I'm a lot more distant from my family than I'd like to be. And like one of the things I've realized is like my girlfriend, like we're talking about getting married and all this other stuff, and her family, a lot of her family is close by. I mean, her dad is right there. Her sisters are nearby. Her brother's in like Texas. So he comes here often. He's not too far away that he can't come visit. And so it's like it's really cool that we get to see like this big mesh of family, and the kids are there. Like we have like the young kids, like they're like toddlers, and it's really like it's a really fulfilling and heartwarming thing, and it makes you feel good. It really is like a very wholesome, good feeling. When you bring incest into that, it destroys that feeling. It destroys that trust between familial bonds. Even if you're not reproducing, like if I had learned my girlfriend had any sort of relations with her brother like that, I suddenly would not be comfortable with her being around her brother at all, assuming I would even date someone who had those kind of relations with their brother. I would be dropped in a second. But assuming that were to become socially acceptable, it would be inevitable that men would feel distrust for their families when those bonds are broken. And women too. Women, if I had a sister and I had done something like that with my sister, my girlfriend would definitely not feel comfortable with me being around my sister. So, like, I'm sick of hearing about this incest argument that certain lefties are making, how it's ethically okay. No, it's not. There is such
it really is becoming mainstream. And if people are like, this isn't really being talked about, this isn't mainstream. Game of Thrones, people.
Yeah.
Like, you had main characters that it was seen as, like, it wasn't seen as problematic that they basically had an incestuous relationship.
And then you look at how popular incestuous pornography is. And that mind rot, that they're brainwashing people into thinking incest is okay. You can go to Reddit right now, r/incest, and you can see people like asking for advice about how to have sex with their brother, their mom, their sister, their dad, their aunt, their uncle, their cousins. It's like, whoa, what is going on here? And there's like hundreds of these people, if not thousands. There's definitely thousands on that subreddit. But I mean, it's like this growing degenerate trend that will be so I can't think of anything more destructive to the family than, say, like pedophilia, like some uncle raping a child or something like that.
It's definitely up there with it. I mean, it's the same thing. If you value your family for sexual gratification, then you don't love them. Like, you're not actually interested in who they are as a person or what they have to offer intellectually, spiritually, or just as this unbreakable bond that, I don't know how to describe a family outside of this already understood order, right? When you inject this, you create this whole new dynamic, and it's even hard for me to describe like what a basic family should be. It's just something that's implied, and you shouldn't even really have to talk about. When you inject this, you violate that, and you don't really care about each other. Like I would stand by that. You don't care about each other. Like you're just in it for the gratification one of you can bring. And as soon as one of you complicates the other's life with you can just need some help or something like that, they're just gonna like, I'm gonna do my own thing.
Yeah.
And It's just not stable.
And that brings it around to the importance of monogamy, even if you don't have children. I mean,
Pretty gross.
the fulfillment, like there's like, I think one of this incest thing is spawning from is this acceptance of polyamory, which is also
Probably.
really super degenerative towards relationships with your wife or your
Poly what?
husband. Polyamory?
Like wife swapping or like multiple partners within like this structure of a.
Oh, like that girl at that wedding. Yeah, really gross.
Well, that's almost like swinging. Polyamory has some sort of like, I don't want to call it code because that's giving it too much credit, but like being a polygamist is there's polygyny and there's polygamy, and one is multiple men and one is multiple women. It doesn't really matter. None of it's healthy.
Yeah. So like the big problem is that if you think you need to be in a open relationship with your wife or husband, what you're saying is that you're not being fulfilled by that relationship, which means there's something wrong with you, or there's something wrong with your spouse, or something, but there's something that's not right. And you need to figure it out, and it's probably a personal problem because two people should be able to work out this issue. But it is saying you're not fulfilled with your marriage is what it is saying.
Wasn't there like a big study a few years ago about like how happy were you at like 20 or 30 years into a marriage? And it was like a surprisingly high number of people were like, no, I wish I had married someone else or something like that. Like, I mean, just wow.
That is unfortunate.
If you're that unhappy, just you got it.
Analysis.
Q, your camera is frozen again. You're just kind of sternly looking at it. Yeah, it's.
Yeah.
I don't know what's up with it today.
That's not good. I don't know. I'm gonna change internet connections again.
Sipping too much bourbon. That's what it is.
No, I'm not.
Oh, now I see you.
Yeah.
I don't know what the deal is.
I think you just got to lean in, you know? Just got to be like Sheryl Sandberg. You just got to lean in.
First off, people wouldn't want this stuff. Like the whole
No one got that joke?
the
Really?
whole reason this is a problem is because porn is easily accessible. Nobody's celibate until marriage. And people have had too many partners before they get married, and their relationships have fallen apart, so they're not really valued for human interaction and human value that just, a relationship just brings naturally. It becomes about gratification and a bunch of other things. But those things, people having experienced those two things before they get married taints what should be really special and unique, even if it's not great. Like, even if this is not like some sort of weird. First off, this notion of like sex should be like this and it's supposed to be this is because you've seen too much sex. Like, you wouldn't even fucking know these things if you hadn't seen this or hadn't experienced this with other people. A dude or a woman having sex and who had never had any sort of preconditions put on that before, they'd be like, that was the best thing I ever did. And then if they did it long enough with each other and worked out their problems, they wouldn't even imagine having sex with other people. They really wouldn't, because they would have a hard time visualizing what that act would even look like, because their only experience with that would have been with their partner.
Yeah,
it would feel unnatural to fantasize about this with someone else.
Yep.
And we know that this is true because old timers from 100 years ago have been interviewed about this very thing, and they've said exactly what I said. So, and they weren't squares or, uptight or any of this crap. All of those stupid terms people put on people who are moral and have integrity in their relationships are just basically an insult to morality and propriety.
That's
it's
very
basically
true.
Just to undermine those institutions.
Very, very true.
All that flyover country.
That flyover country.
Well, it's anywhere. I mean, anywhere in small town America. Like, honestly, every corner of America has been tainted at this point. Like there are very few pit places besides maybe like really fundamentalist Christian or like maybe Mormon areas. I'm not talking about the polygamous fundamental Mormons, but you know the people I'm talking about, like that are tainted with this. If you're giving your kids access to a smartphone and the internet, you are fucking up bad. And like I honestly think that there's going to be some sort of trend in the future of like kids don't get technology amongst traditional Christian people, or like just maybe straight up like I don't want to say forced courtship or like arranged marriage, but like kind of like pushing your kid like, oh, this is a good family, these are good people, and families kind of like pushing kids together that don't want like poisoned.
There is
moral offspring.
You're right about that. Right now, there's a pretty big push within, I think, like Christian eschatology. I don't know if there's any kind of other eschatology, but that like the Antichrist will be using AI and stuff. So there's like this big anti-tech push by a lot of fundamentalist Christians that don't want their kids like using iPads, iPhones, Androids, tablets in general, computers.
There's a lot of very influential rich people that do that with their kids. They don't let them have.
It's like
I don't plan on giving my children technology, and everyone's like, well, how are they going to know how to utilize it? It's like, this is not MS-DOS anymore, people. It's not like when we grew up where you had to learn some like basic coding to operate PowerShell. This is push-button technology. If my kids can't figure out how to push buttons, then they shouldn't be operating soda fountains or elevators either. Like this is very simple, and they don't need to be geniuses to operate that. And the people designing it say that they're making it simpler and simpler and dumber so that anybody can operate these systems.
Yeah. That's really what their goal is. But yeah, it's like basically like Christians like almost embracing like Ted Kaczynski's like manifesto, because he wrote about the like,
I've noticed this actually.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see. I don't disagree with that premise at all. Like I think it's good, and if I ever have kids, I will definitely be keeping technology out of their hands.
All the Silicon Valley companies in the early 2000s, they started to partner up with casinos, like Las Vegas casinos, or casinos elsewhere in the world, specifically the like game psychologists, the sports psychologists, and how they can just keep someone locked in to keep gambling, except instead of gambling with money in a casino or on the device.
Mm.
I noticed like a gamification of relationships where like people really do play games with each other at this point and try to get either a rise or something out of their relationships instead of just enjoying each other's company and listening to one another. And when you present somebody with resistance to their ideas or how they're mistreating you or how their actions may adversely impact you, they immediately take it as like an affront or an attack, and they don't want to hear anything you have to say. And it's hard to have interpersonal relationships with people. I've noticed a lot of people, I'll be having a discussion, and it's if I'm not agreeing with everything they're saying, it's like they get real tense and upset and pissed off, and I'm not really an aggressive person. Like I'm not attacking people.
Yeah, and people doing things for the likes or whatever.
Yeah, it's a dopamine hit.
Dopamine hit.
Yeah, it's dangerous to give kids that.
There was a viral video where it was like teenagers, like 18, 19, 20-year-old, like on spring break when the virus hit. They went to Mexico or something like that, somewhere tropical, and there was like a shark pond or whatever, and the girl is like terrified of sharks, and the boyfriend just pushes her in and has his friend record the whole thing for likes. And she's like, I mean, when you're scared of something like that and then you get like thrown into that, like you turn into like a log, like you just you get so tense you can't even move.
Like that's a good point. Like the obviously
haven't you seen that?
Huh?
You guys not see that? Like I know I
haven't
saw
seen
it.
that. That's crazy.
Obviously, if you're
Yeah.
going to go spring break down with your girlfriend in like Cancun or wherever, like we all know what's happening down there. Like a boyfriend that pushes his girlfriend into a shark pond, there's only one thing he values her for, and it ain't her fucking personality.
Yeah.
And he feels like he can get it from anyone else.
Yeah.
And there is a girl out there that will do the same thing to her boyfriend for the likes, and we've seen those videos too. So it's people do not value each other anymore at all, except for what you can get out of that person, whether it's sexually or financial or material in some way. It's really sad. Interpersonal relationships have really suffered, and I think they've even gotten worse. Some have gotten really better. I would say like really good families have gotten better during COVID, and then really bad ones have gotten worse.
Yeah, it's true. It's I don't know.
Haven't like divorces like spiked, like like average, and then boom, just like spike up because of the
but so have
lockdowns,
births and pregnancies.
Yeah, there's a lot of Facebook posts, and maybe I'm being over judgmental. I don't know, but I've always been taught like you should like kind of turn your kid into the person that like you want them to be, right? And I've seen so many Facebook posts about this COVID lockdown and parents complaining about having to live with their own kids. It's like if you can't live with them, well, I had heard.
What?
Yeah, I've heard many parents complaining about having to live with their own kids, that they can't just send their kids off to school, and the parents are off work, so they have to live the entire time with their kids, and they're complaining about their kids. And it's like, if your kids aren't somebody that aren't pleasant to live with, that's your fault. Like you failed as a parent to make your child into something that would be a pleasant person to live with. Like their unpleasantness is a reflection of your parenting. I mean, these aren't like teenagers. These are like 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds. You know what I mean? So it's
I
think maybe I'm
a funny anecdote about that.
Yeah, maybe I'm being too harsh because I'm not a parent.
Or bothering you, then you are not fulfilling or enriching your kid, and your kid has too much time on its hands.
Yeah. I mean,
and obviously you're not really that attached to that kid, and there's a lot of women out there that have, and men too, because it takes two to tango. But there's a lot of couples out there that have had kids simply to virtue signal or to social signal. Children have become accessories to your life, and they're treated that way. And you accessorize your little accessory, and that's, you send them to school and you take pictures with them and you post them on Facebook, and that's what they are to you. This thing that you can show the world and kind of brag about your material goods and use them to display them. They're like little models to your life.
Yeah, I've seen.
Is that why so many parents are like trying to push their kids into like those little, like those like kids games or kids toy review YouTube channels?
Well, they make a lot of money, honestly. Those make a lot of money, and like parents maybe. I have thought about letting my daughter do stuff like that in the future, just as like thought experiments. And if I was good to my kid, and and I would be, if I allowed her to take all the profits from that and put it towards an education or to invest, then I'd be setting my kid up for success, right? And honestly, this sick material culture where kids unbox videos and kids watch it, that's not the fault of the kid making the videos. It's the fault of the parents who are allowing their children to have like unfettered access to iPads and phones and YouTube.
Yeah,
I've seen.
If there weren't consumers, there wouldn't be dealers. Now, why is there a consumer in the in the household structure? It's because parents are lackadaisical at best.
Yeah, it seems like parenting is like a real vigilant job, and we don't teach vigilance in American society anymore. It doesn't feel like it, which is why it's like you hear about like this, like inequality all the time, like wealth inequality, etc. And like sometimes they blame it on race, and some people blame it on class. But really, it's like you got to be vigilant and pursue what you want to pursue. And I just feel like people don't understand that, because vigilance requires discipline, and if anything, we just want to like numb ourselves out and not have to really think about things too hard or really discipline ourselves to improve ourselves. So it does seem like being a parent is a really vigilant really vigilant job. Like, you got to stay on top of things.
You do, and I mean, ultimately at this point, people are not fulfilled, they're overworked. I mean, society actually does work way too much. And I mean, a medieval peasant actually had more time off and a less burdensome work schedule than the average person. And that's true. That's not hyperbole.
Yeah.
And they want to just zone out and numb out, and they want kids because they want to bring fulfillment to their life. But ultimately, if you are not fulfilled, a child can provide fulfillment. Maybe that is the type of fulfillment that you are missing. But honestly, it would be better if you brought a child into a fulfilled relationship and you had, your own, you found true happiness instead of this consumer glut that you get yourself into. So you have kids, right? And then you are overworked, you're exhausted, and you just want to veg out, and you sit on the couch scrolling with your kids' mindless crap, and that's how you spend time with each other, and that's the value you provide each other. It's extremely shallow.
I was on vacation several years ago, a very affluent part of the country, and I was doing the vacation pretty cheaply, camping and such like that. And I took a tour on this really cool spot that you just can't miss. And the tour guide's talking about the history of the area, this and that, and they're talking about like cows and cattle, beef, food, and these people from a very, very affluent area of the country were just horrified at what this guy was saying, even though this guy was just saying real life stuff. No, we were not at like one of those big agricultural food lots, and these people were just horrified that someone would be like in the cattle industry, like for food. Like they just had there was just such a disconnect, and this lady was talking to another lady about their kids, and because the other lady was also from like very close by, they didn't know it, because everyone is different. It was like 10 people on this tour, and they kept saying, "Oh yeah, my kid is, this was summertime." It's like, "Oh, where's your kids?" "Oh, they're at this camp." And they get back next week, and then 2 days later they go to another camp. I was just like, you don't take vacations with your kids? Like, how come you don't have them out here like this? I would have loved to have seen this, when I was a little kid. They're just like, no, it's more important that they go to summer camps. I want to be the one out here on this vacation. And I was just like, why do you even have kids and stuff? And they were talking about every holiday break of the school year, these kids are gone at some camp.
I had a friend like that. Like when I was a kid,
I what?
I wanted I had a friend that lived across the street from me, and I would always love to hang out with him and stuff when we were kids. We'd like play video games together, ride bikes, go outside, do stuff. And like every summer, he was just away at summer camp all the time.
No, not just summer. It was also Easter, spring break, and also Christmas break.
That sucks. But yeah, I would I kind of hated the summers because he was like my best friend, like in my neighborhood, and I was homeschooled, right? So unless I was going to a friend's or whatever, like neighborhood kids are who you had access to, and like I would hate like the summer a little bit because he would always be gone, and so I'd just be like, this sucks, like friend's gone. But
all these people are working and killing themselves, and like, what are you trying to do? Oh, I want to build a legacy, but nobody can really define that outside of money.
Yeah.
Like I want to build a community. I want to build a network of familial relationships that my kids can fall back upon when I'm dead. I want to build experiences and teach my kids skills and things that, teach them how to think for themselves, philosophy, teach them, love and devotion and duty. And that's a legacy. What happens if your kid dies and the legacy that you built for them was just all the time you spent getting money and things? You don't have a legacy anymore. Or what if you leave all of this money and stuff to a kid and you're like, here's your legacy, and they spend it on hookers and heroin because you raised a narcissist or a sociopath.
Yeah, their name
is
a
person who's unhappy because you didn't help them, you didn't teach them, you didn't fulfill them.
Yeah.
This new notion of legacy is some just gross material culture.
Yeah, I would hate if my kid turned out to be like Hunter Biden.
Yeah, he
love
looks
love.
sad.
He,
Like
he
everybody's
does.
like, he looks
Too
horribly
soon.
sad.
Like-
and
Tucker Carlson, I don't know if you guys are watching him this week, but he had a segment and he's like, listen, I'm not going to keep ragging on Hunter Biden's personal failings. We'll only talk about it as it relates to his personal dealings and finances with his dad and foreign governments. All the other stuff is just beating a man that's already down. And
Yeah.
I'm not going to contribute to that. And I don't think anybody wants to contribute to that. Because when you look at all these leaks about Hunter Biden, it is sad. Like, his life is in a sad state. Like, the thing is like, we've kind of glamorized those things in our society through Hollywood and rock and roll culture and stuff. But the truth is, like, people who are participating in banging hookers and doing coke all the time, they're not chads. They're broken people. You know what I mean? They're broken individuals that have real serious issues. And that's Hunter Biden in a nutshell. I don't know what crimes he's done, but from what the Chinese hackers have been releasing, like, they've been releasing some serious evidence that his life is a very sad state of things. And it's just like, if you're in that situation, like, you're not happy with your life.
Man, they're saying 93 million people have already voted in this election.
That's crazy. How many people usually vote? Isn't it like 100 million or something like that? It's 100 something million? It's not even that, right? That would be like half. No, that wouldn't be half. That'd be like a third.
Yeah, I think it's usually only like not much. If someone's talking, you can just mute your microphone if you have to talk to your family or something.
No, Q already did that. I was looking to see how many people actually voted. So in about 130 million people voted.
I like locked somebody out of the office. This is like a business space actually, and they were like not happy about it. I've like taken over this space.
Yeah.
I wanted to say this about you kind of sparked an interesting question, and perhaps sex, drugs, and rock and roll and all of this I don't know, this dopamine, this nonsense garbage to gratify yourself was popularized because generations since that time have been failed by society, and they basically just want you to numb out and not think about the ways that you were just completely failed, the lack of enrichment your life had, the disassociation you had with your family members, the fact that your parents constantly had to work. You had no attachment to anybody but teachers, which you never had a solid relationship with because you constantly changed grades and had different teachers and switched classes. And you had friends that constantly moved across the country, and nobody has truly built good relationships or solid communities or interpersonal relationships within their own families in the last 80 years or more, probably. And that was causing, if you look at the 60s or the beatnik culture and beat culture of the late 50s, serious problems. And your thought leaders during beat culture were completely disgusted with society at that point, and this is the late 50s, and the lack of substance that their lives ever had because of the rat race their parents had to run, or because of the consumer culture society forced upon them. And perhaps this was all basically popularized to just numb the pain and to keep you from questioning how you had been failed. And there's a lot to unpack there, and there's like different aspects in society you could go into and see the same type of behavior and the same type of, nonsense pushed.
I think that's why they're legal. I think that's why they're legalizing marijuana.
So that people can use it like a...
They want you doped up. Yeah, they want you doped up so you don't pay attention to what's going on and don't question anything.
Yeah, it does seem like a lot like that. I think anxiety is.
Think about it. If you got caught with marijuana when we were, little kids, you were hard jail time.
Yeah.
Any amount.
I think one of the
now it's like, oh, whatever, man. Yeah, dude.
I think one of the surest signs of this that they want us doped up and not really dealing with our problems and kind of like finding fulfillment is anxiety medication. I think that is potentially the worst because anxiety is like the
opioids.
Yeah, opioids. Anxiety is the best mental illness to have because it is the one that we know how to treat the best. Because anxiety is just fear, and the age-old wisdom about fear is that you go face it. And eventually your body learns to deal with all the physiological changes that come with that fear. Your body, literally, like if you study it, your body cannot run at the high energy levels it required to be in that massive state of fear. And we have all this social anxiety that people have. And they would rather take like Xanax or Klonopin or whatever instead of actually dealing with their fears, with actually practice socializing or practice public speaking or whatever gives them anxiety, right? Like doing the thing that gives you fear causes you to be able to beat it. And once you keep doing it over and over and over again, you no longer fear it, right? I'm sure like I'm terrified of cockroaches, but I'm sure if I held a cockroach for long enough, I'd chill out. Like I'm positive of that. Because that's the way we are actually designed. Our bodies are actually designed that way. And that is like the number one thing we hear about is depression and anxiety. But anxiety is so extremely treatable. It's not a secret about how to treat it. But instead of actually pushing people to discipline themselves and treat this fear, they give them drugs instead. They say, here's Busbar. Oh, Busbar's too weak. Here's some Xanax, Klonopin, whatever. And it's been awful for a lot of millennials. I see a lot of millennials complaining about anxiety. I see a lot of Gen Z complaining about anxiety. Anxiety is beatable, and they do want to dope people up. It's just a fact is that they want to dope people up because we have the treatments available. They're free. It's free 99. All you need is someone to hold you accountable. So like if I'm really afraid of something, I just say, hey, can you go with me? And just make sure I do this thing that gives me fear. And you would be like, okay, sure. And then we'd go and I would eventually conquer that fear through practice. And it's free. It's the most basic age-old wisdom. Face your fears, face your demons, whatever. But they don't want that. They just want to give you drugs and turn your brain off and not make you think about things and not like discipline yourself. But yeah, so that's
I've always felt that way.
Yeah. But do you guys want to wrap it up? It's been about 2.5 hours. We're kind of delving into the world.
I think we probably have a lot more to talk about as far as family and relationships. But I mean, there's just so much wrong with our interpersonal relationship at this point that we could literally have an entire month where we just dedicate to that.
Yeah.
And we may have to at some point, but I don't think I have anything else to say.
Yeah. Roland, you got anything else you want to add?
I'm good.
All right. Well, I guess we'll catch the audience later. So y'all have a good day. Have a good holiday season. And I guess be disciplined and improve yourselves.
Yeah, and we'll
see you next week. Have fun voting and have fun standing in line. And
I think we should do a short live stream of the election.
I'm super down. Yeah, I'm super down.
Or a jacket if it's cold and you're in line.
Yeah, we'll do a live stream election on Tuesday.
Yeah, one of the rallies, people got stuck in the cold. The buses weren't there to take them back or something.
Let's start at like 7:30 because I think that's when the polls on the East Coast are gonna already be shutting down. I think.
No way, dude! I'm watching the Joe Rogan, Alex Jones.
I can't.
Election thing.
We could potentially watch that and like comment on it.
You could. I would like to, but I really do have plans that day. I've got a lot of family coming over. I got some family coming over. I got some friends coming over at like 6 p.m. on Tuesday. But if y'all wanted to do like a midday stream, I'd be down for that.
We could do it either midday or if y'all want to do something like pop in like late at night real quick or something like that.
That'd be cool too. Yeah, popping in late at night would be nice.
The polls, Like we could do, if y'all want, we could do something at like, it's gonna be like what, 3 or 4 in the morning before we know much of anything. But if we did something, we're gonna know a lot at like 12:30, 1 a.m. You know, I'll be up.
All right.
All these mail-in ballots, it's going to take days to count it all.
No, that's already started.
Trump-
That starts immediately.
Trump said that he's going to have a, like, if he wins Tuesday, if the votes are in his favor, he's just going to have a victory speech and that's it. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
We'll communicate and figure out whether we want to do something midday or late at night or maybe both.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to end the stream now. I'm not going to hang up the Discord card, but I'm going to end the stream.